All right, I think we're live. Welcome to the studio. Please do me a huge favor and let me know if you can see and hear me. If you're one of those future people watching the replay, welcome to the studio. Pleasure to have your company. We're going to need some waiting music. Yes, I do, Mark. Hey, so let me know. Let me know if I'm coming through loud and clear, and we'll get onto it. I'm so excited for today. I'm going to be painting a seascape. Going to be painting some waves. I got my coffee. Have you got yours? We're going to be together today for 3 hours of non-stop painting talk. So that's going to be fun. Loud and clear. Thank you, Jim Meeker. Okay, well, I'll get going here. So let me show you what I've got on the easel and what I'm going to be working on today. And we got a lot to talk about. We got a lot of ground to cover. This is going to be a good one. Now, this here is one of my pre-prepared panels. It's actually pretty straightforward. If I zoom out just a little bit, it's just simply a little piece of linen, some offcuts, if I'm truthful, that are taped to a masonite board. I like these because it means I get to ship them international and send them around without having that bulky board or a stretcher bar or anything like that. So this painting here, we got a nice long format, so we're going to talk about composition today and maybe see what we can fit into there. But to give you an idea of how big this is, we've got about 20 centimeters by about 45 centimeters. So that's what we're working on. Now, the idea today is I'm going to be starting this painting, but I'm not going to be finishing this painting in this session. And again, if you're watching the future recording, if you're watching this sometime ahead of the live stream, and you've just happened upon this video here on YouTube, then welcome to my channel. Make sure you're subscribed. Click the bell notification icon so you're notified when I upload another video or when I'm about to go live. That way you'll be notified. But I digress. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get most of this blocked in today and hopefully realize a few of the finer points of the painting and the composition. And then tomorrow, so the very next day, as of this live stream, I'm going live exclusively on the Academy for 5 hours. I'm going to be more or less finishing this painting off, so that's a total of 8 hours of painting time. And then at the end of that session, I'm giving away the painting. I'm giving it to one of our lucky viewers on the Academy. So if you want to check that out and you want to be in it to win it, then make sure you join that Academy. The link is top linked in the description down below. I can tell you more about that later on, but I won't be giving away the painting in this session. It's going to happen over on the Academy, so go and check that out if you're interested. But regardless, I'm glad you're here. We got a lot to talk about, and I'm very, very excited to share this with you. So let's jump into a bit of this reference material here. And is this the right camera? No, not that one. This one here. And let me show you what I've got. So this area here, I've been sitting on this photograph for a while, and as with most of my reference material. And I do like painting from photographs. I think that's okay. I love painting plein air, love painting from life, but occasionally you find some really great pictures and you're like, man, that's got the seed of the idea there where this beautiful composition could really grow. So I want to tease out what's really working here with some of these images I'm about to show you, and maybe discard some of those things that aren't working. So what I love about this is the light. Now this part of the coastline here in New Zealand, we're just driving north at this point. We're heading up the Kaikoura coast. So this is the east coast of the South Island of New Zealand. And it's just as you start into that rocky coastline, just as you come out from the mountains, you hit that coastline, you start driving north. And so I've got these really beautiful rocky forms that are catching this morning light. And so I thought, well, this is a very interesting image. Something here could work. So let's have a look through. Now, what I really loved was that light, how it's channeled. So you can imagine there's some big rocks here in the foreground, casting a shadow across that foreground, but our eye is drawn to that light. And so that's what I really want to emphasize in this painting. But also a wave. Oh man, I love me a nice crashing wave. So I got a few things here. I'll pull some of this reference in. By the way, my Academy already has access to all of this reference material, royalty and copyright free. So if you want to have a go with that, check that out. Again, top link in the description down below. But this is our area that I'm going to be working on. Yeah, Nikki says, ooh, Kaikoura crayfish. And shout out to all my Academy members that I can see in the live chat right now. To Jim, to Jen, to Irene, to Nikki and Danielle and Rhiannon and Heidi and Marley's is here, and oh my goodness, well, it looks like it's just Academy members here watching live at the moment. So if you've never seen me before, if you've never tuned into a live stream before, if this is your first time, then please do hit me up in the live chat right now by typing in 3 capital N's for new, new, new. Now, the other thing I like to do here, so I'm here for you, right? And I have a passion for teaching this stuff. I just love oil painting. And I want to make sure that you come away with some ideas, with some techniques, with some things to think about here. And so let's talk about this. And so in order for me to answer your question, I want to be able to see that question. And so one thing my eyeball is looking for on this screen that's just up here above my easel is 3 capital Qs. For question, question, question. Those 3 capital Qs, or if you can tag me in the comment and it highlights my name and Andrew, it highlights my name in orange, I'll see Andrew on there, then I'll be able to read your question out. So Jim Meeker is definitely not new, new, new. There you go. Hey, Brian, nice to meet you, Brian. Welcome to the live stream. Welcome, Lou. Good to see you. And we got a few others. To Div Chief 07, welcome, welcome. It's absolutely wonderful. Okay, get your coffee. Let's jump straight into it. So I've got here my palette of colors. One thing I like to stick with is a chromatic order, okay? What does that mean? It means that all of my colors here on the palette are more or less going in order of the color wheel. If we took that color wheel of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, we unfurled that thing, starting with whatever's tonally lightest, closest to that white, we move through all of our high key, high chroma colors to the right of the white. Now, I stick to this order and pattern because it just makes sense to me. And as I introduce and play with the different colors, I still am sticking to that family of yellows, moving through some oranges into the reds, into the violets, into the blues, into the greens. Then everything to the left of that white is going to be my earth tones, again, following some sort of chromatic order, but working in the opposite direction, through yellows to reds to the brown. So I've got 2 different whites here. And so you might be wondering, well, why the heck have we got those? We're going to talk a little bit about that in this live stream. Again, we got about 3 hours together, so we got some time. I will take a little 5-minute break in the middle of this session because it's a bit tough just going for 3 hours straight without taking a break. So I might get a quick cup of coffee, but we can take a little brief intermission in about an hour and a half's time. So here, I got titanium white and Kremnitz white. Now, Kremnitz white has been an absolute game changer. It's a lead-based white. I get questions about this all the time. It is toxic, yes, but only if you're ingesting it and getting copious amounts on your hands and on your skin. But in and of itself, it doesn't release a fume, so it's not gassing off any lead that can harm you in the studio. It's all combined with that oil. But it has some beautiful qualities. Namely, the biggest one is that it's extremely archival, which means it's going to last a long time. The other quality that it has is it's beautifully transparent, and that's a quality that I'm going to want to use to its full advantage during my block-in process, but also for some of those finer details and glazing towards the end of the process. So we won't really get into any glazing today because everything's just going to be a direct painting, 1 layer here for the block-in. Right, let's go through some of these colors. I've got burnt umber, transparent red oxide, transparent yellow oxide. My 2 whites are titanium white and Kremnitz white. I'm playing with these 2 bad boys right now. This is nickel yellow and nickel yellow deep. And these are a replacement for that Naples yellow. The particular brand of paint that I'm using is Blue Ridge Handmade Oil Colors. They're made in Asheville, North Carolina. Absolutely beautiful. It's the only paint that I use now. And so I was talking to Eric, the guy who spearheads that, and he makes Blue Ridge oils. And I said, hey, I got to get my hands on some Naples. And he's like, well, we can't get genuine Naples anymore, but check these out. There's a lot of imitation Naples out there, but the genuine stuff, unfortunately, I think the mine's now dried up. So nickel yellow deep is a really nice replacement, and I'm really enjoying the results so far. But ordinarily, I don't have that on my palette. I just go straight for the cadmium lemon, which is the next one along. Then I've got Indian yellow. I've got some cadmium red light, permanent crimson, quinacridone magenta, ultramarine blue, cobalt teal, phthalo green, and chromium green oxide. So you don't need all of those colors. This is more my full extended palette, but it's nice to have this kind of range. If you were going to drop any that were kind of non-essential, you could drop that chromium green oxide, you could drop those nickel yellows out of there, and you could drop the permanent crimson, and that would get you by pretty well. And you could also even drop that cobalt blue, because you can achieve so much with ultramarine and then just kicking it in different directions. Right, so, and again, just hit me up. If you got a question, 3 capital Qs for question, question, question. That way I will see it. And hey, my OGs, you know what to do. Shout out to my OGs. These are people that have been following me from the beginning. Welcome. Rublev has genuine Naples yellow, and Rublev do beautiful, beautiful paint as well. I do have some Rublev, not out on my palette currently, but it is very nice stuff. Hello, Lori, how are you? Like if you're watching live, yeah, actually, and I keep forgetting to do this. I'm terrible at this stuff, but hey, do me a huge favor. If you're watching live right now, or if you're watching the replay, whatever, please do me a favor. Click the like button. Would you please just hit the like button for me right now? I appreciate that so much. And if you're excited about what you're about to see, as excited as I am anyway, then hit that like for me. And that way, it'll let more people know about this free content. And I got a lot of live streams coming your way. We got a lot of paint and stuff to talk about. So I can't wait to share more of this with you, but it just helps it get out to more and more people if you click the like. Thank you. All right, Danielle's been following. Danielle has been following since 2016. Awesome. Hello, Ali. How are you? Ali in Algeria. Hello, Sabine. Good to see you. Like button clicked. Thank you, Lane. I might have to mute that, that microphone every now and again if I have to cough. Now, what we're going to do first is sketch up our composition. Again, roughly 45 centimeters by 20 centimeters is my composition. It's a pre-primed linen. I've got an imprimatura on there, which is a burnt sienna, burnt umber combination. I rub that back thoroughly, and that just reveals a little bit of a stain. So it's completely dry before we go on over this with any oil color. Now I have a number 4 Rosemarine Coat filbert. This is an evergreen filbert. I love sketching up the composition with this. And as you can see, I've got a little bit of reference material along the bottom of the screen there. So let's just have a look at what we can do. Now I'm starting to think compositionally initially, what is my main focal point? What is this painting about? Generally, I like to place that focal point first. Now, a big part of this composition is that rock. However, it's not the primary focus of this painting. The primary focus, I think, has got to be this wave. And I'm looking forward to using this wave to lead the eye towards that. So I'm gonna treat this wave here, sketching this in here, I'm gonna treat this like a bit of an arrow that's gonna point at the rock, and hopefully we can create some flow between the two. But I love this curling wave. So I'm thinking the top of my wave is going to go there. It's going to be curling over. We're going to be sighting down this with some sort of perspective. I'm going to change the perspective slightly. I do like that we're looking somewhat downwards onto that ocean across at this wave. But I really feel like if we want to be part of the action, I might have to lower that horizon and our vantage point, so we come more in line with this wave. So I'm not looking down on it, making the wave appear smaller, but I'm looking across and at it, hopefully making the wave appear slightly bigger. Okay, so are you recording today's session? I am now, Tamara. Oh my goodness. Give me a second. Thank you, Tamara. You rock. I just missed the first couple of marks, but I'm recording now. Tamara, can you be my camera check for me? Just remind me in about 30 minutes to just glance over my shoulder and see if that thing's still recording. Now, of course, I edit these in a little bit more detail and do a more detailed voiceover for longer, lengthier instruction over on my academy. So, and Tamara, of course, has been a member there for a few years now. So thank you, Tamara. Appreciate you. All right. QQQ from Marley's. Anyone using Zest-It solvent for brush cleaning? I'm using Gamsol at the moment, Marley's. Hi from Germany. Yes, hello, Germany. All right. So a combination of burnt umber and quinacridone magenta actually works really, really well for the initial SketchUp. And I like to sketch up with a brush. So the reason I'm sketching up with a brush is because it just frees me up a little bit, and it actually causes me to think about my brushwork, to think about my movement, and it does build confidence over time. The more you do this, the more you feel like you can just unleash that creativity and not be so tight and controlled. And this is something personally that I have struggled with and I continue to work on, but I encourage all my students to draw with the brush. One of the exercises that really helps with this is painting plein air. And of course, when we're painting plein air, you got to work pretty quick. And so drawing with that brush just helps with those snap decisions. So we've got somewhat of a rocky shore, and I'm thinking that everything below this line, and let me just move my camera here so you can see what I'm doing. I'm thinking that everything below that line is going to be deep shadowed foreground. And just like I'm seeing in my photographic reference, we're going to look beyond that shadowed foreground, a couple of rocky forms, to this wave that is illuminated by this morning sunlight, a couple of other rocks here in the foreground to give a little bit of a splash, maybe a bit of a splash here against the rock. That'd be neat. And then perhaps a couple of larger rocks over here. Do you consider yourself a fast or a slow painter? A question from A. Petrus. I don't know. I don't know. I think, I think I'm pretty fast at blocking in. I'll let you be the judge of that after today's session. And I imagine a few people watching the recording of this, the playback of this after it's gone live. We'll skip ahead and see how we did in about 3 hours, so I'll let you be the judge of that. The block-in is always something that goes slightly faster than the rest of the process. And because of that, it's one of my favorite parts of the painting process. I love the immediacy of the block-in. It's after this, adding the second layer, that things begin to slow down. And they can, without a good plan, they can drag on. Now, what you're watching right now is actually part of my planning process. So this is something that I'm hoping to do a much bigger seascape at some point that's going to feature a crashing wave, but I'm unsure as to exactly what the composition is going to be. And I want to do quite a monstrous painting. So I'm doing a series of small waves. And so what we're doing today, I'm considering a sketch. My sketches of late are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But that's okay. This is just kind of like my layout space, my working things out. So I just want to get a little bit of an indication first about where maybe some darks are going to go. This isn't the color of my dark shadow by any means, but I'm just working in here with my Evergreen Filbert number 4. Now this is a synthetic brush. It holds its bristles relatively tight together. And I'm also using just a touch of Liquid Original in here. And that is an alkyd resin. It will improve the flow of my colors. And if I'm using about 1 part medium to 3 parts paint, I'm going to have the right ratio to get a good film dry overnight, depending on the weather, of course. But it just breaks the tension of those oils and just allows for a little bit more workability in those colors. The oils can be a bit stiff coming straight out of the tube. So I'm thinking these rocks here in the foreground are going to be quite dark. Now, there are a few things that I'm on the lookout for in my composition. I've got 5 don'ts that I'm really trying not to break these rules. And let's see if I can remember them off the top of my dome here. But the 5 don'ts are, number 1, center lines. Now, even though I might have something in the middle, occupying space in the middle, I don't want to put an object smack bang like a bullseye target right in the middle. So I wouldn't put this rock, for instance, right in the middle. I wouldn't put the main interest of the wave, which is going to be that curling aspect right there, right in the middle, or have a horizontal or a vertical line right in the middle. So you've noticed that I probably have done an okay job steering clear of dead center. I'm going for this aesthetic, this type of composition called asymmetrical balance. This works really well for landscape painting. It allows us to create something that looks natural. I want the viewer, when they're looking at this painting, to not be aware that this was composed, that there was some sort of design or thought going in here. I just want it to feel natural and easy on the eye. And so if I avoid that center, it doesn't feel like I've just pointed the camera there and it's a painting of a wave, of a rock. A lot of my photos, though, can be a little bit that way. So I'm using the photographs as reference, but I'm not copying exactly what I'm seeing in them. I'm just taking some cues from them. Now, the other thing that I'm on the lookout for is anything that points directly at a corner. I try not to do this. So, for instance, let's say this rock, for instance, I wouldn't want to have that rock exiting the corner right there. I'm actually thinking it might make it a little more dramatic to have this rock, push it back just a little bit as some sort of sea cliff, and have this rock come up in front. That would be interesting. So I'll take that all the way off the edge there. Whenever we put something in the corner or point at the corner, it tends to draw the eye towards the corner. And so one thing I want to do is keep away from that, because I want to keep the viewer's attention, your attention right now, within the bounds of my composition. Let me just make sure I'm focused here. Then the other thing that we want to make sure we do is that we don't have any lines like this line here. Horizons can be really notorious for this. Any lines that come into contact with the edge of the canvas in an abrupt way where our attention exits the composition. I call these exiting vectors. What I try to do is anytime I'm going off the edge of the canvas, I try to break that line and redirect. One way we could break this line is by going to our, and I'll just flip this around. This, I got a little bit of reference here on my iPad that's next to my easel. Why are you not flipping? Come on, do the flippy thing. No, it's not doing the flippy thing. How do you do the flippy thing on an iPad? Ah, that's how you do it. Boom, done. Okay, cool. One way that I could break this line is with this curling wave right here. As it comes in, I could have a little bit of that splash that just breaks that horizon and obscures that line, keeping our attention within the scene. Now, it might seem a little bit chaotic, and it is, but I can tell exactly what I want to do here with this initial step. All I'm doing is mapping out the major line and shape of my composition, which is actually the first consideration of two-dimensional representational painting, is your line and shape. It's the drawing behind your painting. But we were talking about composition. Break those exiting vectors. Then, the other thing is, and we have the tendency to do this, well, I do, I should speak for myself, putting in too much information. There's a couple of things going on in this painting that I really want to emphasize, and it's this rock right here and this wave. Maybe one thing I could do compositionally is just increase the size of that rock slightly. That might be interesting. And just increase the size of that curl. Bring them a little closer together. Yeah, that'll work. So generally what I'm trying to balance is a 1 and a 2 different focal points, and then create some sort of relationship or tension between them. But if I start getting up to about 4, 5, 6, 8, more focal points, you start to spread out that attention and you weaken your composition by having just too much going on. But I'm going to put up my hand here and say guilty. I do this all the blooming time, all the time. All right, I got here, do I have any questions here? Again, here I got one here from Noah Martinson. G'day, Noah, how are you? One thing with drawing with brush, make edges a bit easier to get accurate later in the painting. I typically draw with charcoal, but I'm debating whether switching to drawing with my brush. So when we're dealing with a direct painting technique, Noah, and getting into it here, you know, I'm about to add colors to the top. There's a couple of considerations. One, I want to choose some colors that are going to work really well with the palette that I'm using here in this painting. But I'm again trying to go for something that's going to give me a little bit of flow. So what I find happens when I'm drawing with a pencil or charcoal is I tend to tighten up. And in an effort to paint a little bit looser and paint a little bit quicker and build that confidence, drawing with a brush all the way. So this combination of color, burnt umber and quinacridone magenta, you might think, well, how is that going to work with your sky blues and the blues in the water and all of that? You're going to see there's actually going to be a ton of umber that I'm using and quinacridone magenta in virtually every element of this painting. So I'm going to get really good color coordination there as well. But again, if that doesn't answer your question, let me know. But I feel that it just makes us better painters. Again, it depends what you're going for. If you've got a really detailed composition and you feel that it's going to help you to do pencil or charcoal, stick with it. But for me, I find that doing it this way is beneficial for so many reasons. All right, need a new microphone. Sometimes you get a bit staticky when you move. Oh, okay, it's probably because I am rubbing this against my shirt. Sorry, Lynn, give me 1 second. Is that better? Let me know if that's better. Hopefully I should be coming through a little bit better. It was rubbing against my collar. All right. There you go. Thanks for the plug there, Nikki. Cool. Now, look, if you don't mind, we are about to get into this, and I'm about to get out some color, and we'll talk about how we start to map this in. But just to kind of give you an idea, maybe I can make this a little clearer before we actually lay out some color. Because you're probably looking at this going, what the heck are you thinking, dude? But right here, what I think is we need to have this wave curling up this way. And I've actually gone to some different reference material. Let me pull it up on my other screen and show you. Do I have this in this file? Yes, I do. Here we go. I'm going to just share my screen. So you've got this image down at the bottom of the screen. But I'll do this. So this wave here is photographed in a place called Yallingup in Western Australia. But I'm adding it to a Kaikoura scene. One thing that I'm on the lookout for is matching the light angle as best as I can. But I thought that this would make a great subject. So that's what I'm referring to on my iPad here. And then when we use that in conjunction with this rock, that's the idea in a nutshell. All right, but how do I sketch that out with just a little bit more detail so I can see what's going on as I start to lay in color? And again, once we start laying in that wet paint, we can move this stuff around. So, and I'll be making some shifts and adjustments as I go. I'm not expecting it to get exactly right on the first hit. Just close. But that feels nice to me. That feels nice. QQQ from Sabine. I see so much darkness in the front bottom left area. To me, that's a huge turnoff. Just my personal choice. Just wondering if you're looking to do all that darkness. Well, what I'm really going to enjoy here, Sabine, is yes, I am going to have some darkness. There are going to be rocks here that are in the foreground that cut across this foreground. So we're standing here in the cold shade, waiting for this dawn light to come over. And a lot of people do shy away from dark. But I challenge you, go and look at the old masters, have a look at what they did with their paintings, and this inspires me hugely. I like using darkness or deep tone to drive a light aspect. We've got to have a point of contrast. You can't have that intensity of the morning sunlight without dark. That's my theory anyway. So whilst that might be a turnoff aesthetically for some, I'm looking forward to having a cold, dark foreground here to make that warm, bright light stand out all the more. And it's about creating a bit of a tension and a drama between those two. But very good point. Let's see if it'll work. It might end up being too heavy, and then maybe a solution could be just break it up with a little bit of white water that's lapping these stones in the foreground. But this idea of having big, large objects in your composition right in the foreground that we're looking past is called repoussoir. So it's a way of clipping that bottom of your composition. And what it tells the viewer, it's kind of interesting. It says that there's so much going on here in this painting that it continues beyond the bounds of that painting. And it's a way to give that viewer immediate access to your composition. But again, hopefully that'll be clearer as we block this in. Hello to Matthew Russell in Scotland. How are you? Good to see you. Thanks for joining. Thank you, Carol. New. Carol Seville is here. She's new. She's never seen me. Val Watts. Hello. Greetings. Louisa. I haven't seen you in a little while. How are you, Louisa? Have you ever tried safflower oil to clean your brush? No, I haven't. I've been using a two-step process and then orange essence brush cleaner. Fantastic. Oh, that's a really good idea. Hey, Andrew, what camera are you using for streaming? I know it's not related to painting, but just curious. Good vibes. Yep. Okay, so I'm using two different cameras here. Let me switch the angle. I'm using a Canon 90D and a Canon 80D. And my Canon 80D has now timed out. Let me just reset that sucker. Just 1 second. It's trying to handle a lot, and I might have some connection issues today. I hope not. There we go. Are we on? Yeah, we're on. Good. We're on there? Yep, good. Okay. So 2 Canons. My palette cam is a Sony ZV-1, and this one that I'm coming to you on, that you're looking at me on over here, that's a Sony ZV-1 as well. And then I'm using 2 Canon DSLR for my main shots. And a Rode Wireless Go mic as well, just in case you were wondering. And I hope that sounds better, Lynn. Let me know. All right, let's start off here with whatever's furthest away and work our way forward. The reason I do this is because it helps me with my edge quality as I bring the scene forward, but it also allows me to have better control of my colors. The sky is pretty simple here. I'm going to start off with a bit of white and mix into that a touch of Liquid Original. Again, if you're just joining me, welcome to the studio. We're painting a little seascape today. Do me a huge favor and hit that like button. If you've already, in just the short time we've been together today, gotten something from this, then please do me a huge favor and hit the like button. And again, I'm here, if you're watching live, I'm here to answer your questions, so go ahead and hit me up in the live chat here. And please do me a favor and type in 3 capital Qs, QQQ, and that way it'll allow that question to stand out and I'll see it as I'm skimming the screen here. It's a little bit, you know, imagine, it's a little bit tricky to read comments, paint, and talk at the same time, but we're managing. Do you have a few beers when painting? I don't actually drink, Steve. Found it very good for abstract painting. I'm sure that works better for abstract painting. Maybe it helps abstract painting make sense, but I don't drink at all there, Steve. So I'm coffee is my jam. So that's what I'm into. I sometimes feel it a bit if I'm sniffing too many paint fumes, but generally I do okay on that too. So now the initial block-in colors that I'm using here, this is ultramarine blue and my combination of 2 whites, titanium white and Cremnitz white. I'm going to mix into this a little bit of liquid impasto. It's similar to the Liquid Original. It will allow the paint film to dry very fast, but it also just improves a little bit of that texture, but at the same time, it gives a paint texture. But I will use also a little bit of that Liquid Original. So I'm starting off close here, close to the horizon first, with whatever blues are furthest away from the viewer. And I like to start with whatever's furthest away first, and then work my way towards the viewer. So naturally, the furthest thing in the composition is that sky. And I'm brushing it in here. I've moved from my synthetic brush over to a bristle brush. And you'll see here that it gets a little bit thicker and a little bit more material and volume out. Now, as we go up in the sky, I'm going to allow a bit more saturation to come through. And I've gotten rid of that palette shot, but I wanted you to see this closer shot here. A little bit of ultramarine blue and cobalt teal now. And I'll start to work from the top of my sky and just start to scrub that color in. I'm reloading my brush continually because I want this initial layer of paint to have some tooth, some body to it, and I want some volume here as well. Now, I've gotten quite a bit of that blue out, but that's okay. I'm starting with a lighter color here and a deeper color here, and when we bring them together, we can find a happy medium between the two and create some sort of gradient. Now, I've found that that nickel yellow deep is great for the sky, but it does have the tendency to turn the sky green. I've added to it just a touch of cadmium red light. This will gray it out, creating a bit of an orange, and as we know, the orange and blue are complementary opposites, so they kind of tend to dull each other down. And so I'll bring those two together. And I want to have a nice smooth sky in this painting. Not much of a feature going on in the sky. It's going to be a very calm, clear dawn on the Kaikoura coast. Do you have any odor issues with liquid? Randy, you can sometimes have odor issues with the liquid, particularly if you're working in a small space. But I've got a pretty large studio here. I'm in an old building here in the town of Lawrence in the South Island of New Zealand. So I've got a pretty large studio. And so I don't notice the fumes as much, but I will tell you, I don't keep open vessels in the studio beyond what's on my palette. So let's go to that palette shot again. I'll just bring that in here. So I've got this cup. I don't know if you can see it in the corner of just here. There's just a little bit of liquid there. So there will be a little off-gassing there and a little bit from what I'm mixing here, but it's not enough to really bother me. And I think that's due to the large open space. In smaller studios that I've had, I had some sort of extraction system, which was just one of your standard bathroom vent fans, and I put that into a window box, and then I just had some ducting attached to that and put that over my palette, and that was enough to get rid of 99% of those fumes. So liquid does contain a chemical called butanone oxime. I'm not too sure of the long-term effects of that, but it really doesn't seem to bother me. I think that the convenience far outweighs the risk, but that's just me. Is that dagger brush? Yes, I'm using a dagger brush now, Susan. A couple of times now I see you use angle brushes a lot. Does it help? Yes, it does. So what I love about the dagger brush, and if you want to know, this is actually the Tisch dagger made by Rosemary & Co. This is a 5/8 of an inch. And for this size, it's a pretty big brush. So what I really love about this brush is just the speed. I can get a pretty broad shape with this brush, fill in a lot of area quickly with some nice broad strokes. I can blend across zones pretty easily. I can also create some level of detail and precision by using the blade edge or the point of that dagger. And I'm using this brush so much. It's actually really helped my technique overall. And it hasn't completely replaced filberts and flats, but I love it. I love it. And not just because my name's on it. I designed this in conjunction with Rosemary & Co. And they just do a brilliant job making brushes. So that's why I use them. But if you want to check them out, I'm pretty sure there's a link in the description below. Now I've got a little bit of a headland back here. That's going to allow me to communicate some of this depth. So I'll just work up to that horizon line. And so my initial layer, you might be wondering, why have this color come through at all, this initial underlying imprimatura? And the reason for this is because a little bit of warmth and glow is going to show through some gaps in my brushwork. And whenever I've done this, it just makes the painting feel a little bit richer, particularly if it's somewhere in the neighborhood of a complementary opposite of whatever's going over the top. It creates this vibrancy. I found that working over the top of white canvases killed my colors initially. And that's why I love doing this. But a lot of the old masters actually did this. Often they'd use raw umber or burnt umber, but often they would put down some type of colored ground to work into. And where I first came across this was with some of Constable's work. I saw one unfinished painting where he had a line of trees, and there was a burnt sienna in Prematura, and the trees were just glowing red. And I thought, wow, that looks out of place. And I was like, far out, they're actually not finished. He never got to that row of trees, and it was showing this red. And ever since I saw that, I started using this, and it's actually improved my landscape paintings tremendously. Yeah, it might be buffering there. Sorry about that, Hal. How do you avoid the dreaded chalkiness using titanium white? I'm still having trouble with that. So Gary, one of the ways to avoid that chalkiness is to get some Cremnitz white. And again, that's why I'm using these two. Yep, Tamara's still recording. Thanks so much. So use Cremnitz white. That'll help you a lot there. Let's go back to our wide angle, and am I still coming through here? It keeps shutting down on me. I don't know why it's doing that. Let me just bring it back. I might give up on my wide angle here, folks. For some reason, it's really buffering. All right, we're back. Okay, good. Hopefully we stay here. All right. So let's start bringing this forward. Naturally, the next area to come forward is that headland that's coming through. Now, but I've been with you for about 45 minutes. We're going to go for a total of 3 hours today. Before I go any further, though, will you allow, please, just a brief interruption? If you're enjoying this so far, I think you might really like this. And so this is what I want to tell you about. Check this out. Let me just get these off the screen. Here we go. You might not know, but I've got my own online art school. It's called Tish Academy. And Tish Academy is your one-stop shop if you want to learn how to paint, how to draw, how to push your techniques even further to really elevate your art and just become more proficient with your techniques, have more success at the easel, and create some stuff that you're really proud of. Now, every single week with my Academy tier, and there's 2 different tiers on the Academy, the Studio tier and the Academy tier, but every week with that Academy tier, I'm going live in these full live streams. Tomorrow's live stream, just to give you an idea, is going to be 5 hours long. You don't have to watch the whole thing in one hit. You don't have to watch it live at all. They always go into a library where they're backed up, and you can watch anytime you like. The best thing about this is you're joining an exclusive community of like-minded artists who are just as passionate about their art as you are and are dedicated to skilling up and pushing their techniques further. And we really do have, and I might sound biased, maybe I am, but I really do feel we have the best community online. I love our Tish Academy members. And so I'm going to ask my Tish Academy members now, just a shout out to all my members who have been following me for years and years. If you just let people know how you find the Academy and what you think and what you're getting out of it, let them know in the live chat there. Or if you're watching the replay, let them know in the comments down below. But essentially, we've got hundreds of hours of content, over 350 hours now of content in our content library across a range of different subjects. It's not just painting seascapes and waves or just landscapes. There's still life material there. There are portraits. There's a lot of different topics as well. Like I do critique videos as well as an art business course. If you wanted to push things further with your professional art, check that out. Okay, so the Academy tier, monthly, it's 25 bucks a month. The Studio tier is 15 bucks a month. The difference between those tiers is with your Academy VIP tier, you get those weekly live streams and you get your questions answered live. You also have direct access to me. You can DM me anytime through the Academy. So if that sounds like you, check it out. Go to tish.academy. There's the address right there at the bottom of the screen. And I hope to see you there. Now, just one more thing to help sweeten the deal a little bit here. As soon as you sign up, you're going to get a 7-day free trial. So you don't have to make your mind up today, and you don't have to jump in and make that commitment right away. Just try it for free on me. And if you cancel any time within that 7 days, no problem at all. But it also comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So check it out today. Visit tish.academy. Again, there's the address right there. And I've also linked it at the top of the description down below. So check it out. Okay, let's get straight back to painting. Thank you for allowing that brief interruption. And thank you and a shout out to all of my Tish Academy members who are hitting us up in the live chat. Thank you, Lynn. You too. You too. All right. Thank you, Thomas. Okay, so QQQ from Laura. Didn't you use flake white? Do you find Cremnitz to be more versatile? So Cremnitz, again, is a lead-based white. Some flakes, depending on the manufacturer, are lead-based, but a lot of them these days do contain zinc. I just don't recommend using zinc. It can be a little problematic, so it leads to things like delamination and such. So you want to just watch out for that. Now, there's a handful of colors that don't recede well over a vast distance. One of those is red. When you're looking at your landscape, you might notice what gives it that depth? What gives it that sense of enormous space and vastness? Well, it's this point of difference between forms that are very far away from the viewer and things that are really close up. Now, if we adhere to that, almost as a universal principle, then we can create an illusion of depth on our two-dimensional surface. There's no actual depth here. Everything's two-dimensional. But we can create that illusion by just creating a point of difference between those two. So I just mixed up a bit of a gray, and I used some transparent red oxide, a touch of burnt umber, some ultramarine blue, and some quinacridone magenta. And so with that gray, which might in and of itself feel like a very drab color, and it is, but with that gray, I just mapped in this headland back here. I'm going to create a little point of difference tonally, increase the heat just a touch with a touch more, not much, touch more transparent red oxide, and just get a bit of relief into that hillside. A lot of this can be cleared up in the second layer of paint, but for my block end, I want some indication of that headland out there because I love this bay-like feeling of having some sort of peninsula or headland in the distance. It gives us another little destination back there. Now, as we come forward, we're doing a couple of things. We are dropping our tonal values of our shadows, but we're also turning up the intensity of our light and turning up the intensity of our chroma. So that is I sometimes refer to that as saturation, color saturation. So still using the same brush, but now let's start to get into these values here of these shadows before we start our wave. I think this area of ocean we're going to do last, so let's start to get into some of these values. Map in our tones really quickly, and then we'll work on refining. How's that sound? So I'm noticing here, and you can see here in that little bit of reference material on the bottom right, that there's a nice bluish gray to some of those shadows in the rocks. I'm going to mix this up with a bit of ultramarine blue and burnt umber and a touch of Cremnitz white. Oh, I forgot to mention the most important thing about joining the Academy, if you're just tuning in, is that tomorrow in the live stream on the Academy, I'm going to be working on this same painting again for a further 5 hours, and at the end of that session, I'm giving the painting away. Now, because you're probably wondering, well, what's that painting worth? What would you sell that painting for? A finished painting of this size would go for around $4,500 to $5,000. So it's actually somewhat valuable. That's when they sell. And they frequently do. I'm blessed by that. But I thought that would be neat. And it was just on my heart to go, you know what, I'd love to give this away to one of my members. So check it out. Link in the description down below. So I've got a ton of reflected light coming through here. And let's go to that close-up so you can see this a little bit better. Celine, you might find that in Southern California, you might not be able to get a lot of these colors at the store, but Blue Ridge Oil Paint has got an online store. If you go to blueridgeoilpaint.com, you'll find it. Danielle says, me. So we're giving it away, this painting away to a lucky viewer tomorrow, but it's going to be randomly selected. It's not selected by me, so I can't be biased. Not that I have favorites. I love you all equally, but I'm going to be giving it away based on, we've got a random comment selector. It's almost like a random number generator, so I couldn't even, if I tried, give this away to somebody in particular. So it's going to be somebody from the comments in tomorrow's live stream selected at random. All right. Missed the beginning. Assume you're painting on linen. Do you have a ground or gesso on the linen? Darren, fantastic question. So this is triple primed with an oil-based primer, and it's a very fine weave linen. In fact, let me do that zoom in again with the camera, and this will give you some sort of idea of how fine that weave is. So let's focus on this. Boom. There's the weave. That's nearly focused. And just to give you an idea, that's my finger right there. So it's pretty fine weave linen indeed. And this is triple prime. So this particular linen is made by Bel Arti. It's I believe this is 40 OP is the code for this linen. 40 OP. Now back to it. I've got a little bit of burnt umber here. So the mix, I'm just going to call out my colors because you can't see the palette at the moment. But burnt umber and ultramarine blue and a little bit of white. And as we come forward, and this is still over here on the in some, well, let's call it the mid-ground part of these rocks. As we come forward, I will darken these grays. But I was talking before about composition. I think we got up to exiting vectors, didn't we? No, too much information. Number 4. What was the fifth one? Well, the fifth one is something that I call aberration. And this is where we put human order and pattern into our composition, trying to create something that looks natural, but we end up creating something that looks manufactured and mechanical and artificial. I'm on the lookout for this all the time. I do this in my paintings all the frickin' time, dude, all the time. So as soon as I recognize it, as soon as I see it, I just try to do something about it and break it. And so again, just an overview, those compositional don'ts that I'm looking for are center lines. I want to avoid those center lines and the middle. I want to avoid anything being placed in the corner that's going to draw the eye or appear too heavy. Maybe that rock might be a problem, but I'm going to roll with it. We'll see how we go. Any exiting vectors, I don't want any lines that are going to point directly off the edge of the canvas, trying to harness and keep our attention here in the foreground. I don't want to have too much information in there, and then I don't want to create anything that looks mechanical or artificial. If I avoid those, I stand a pretty good chance of creating a composition that will draw the eye, look natural, feel engaging and dynamic. But that doesn't really include the do's. What are we going to do with our composition? Well, the sky's the limit with our composition. We could do all kinds of things with this, but there are generally 4 things that I'm lining up and considering when it comes to composing a painting. And I think about these things because I know if I do a really good job with these 4 considerations, I'm going to create a convincing sense of form, depth, light, and material. And think about it. If we're going to paint anything that looks realistic, we really want to create a convincing sense of form. So it's some 3-dimensionality, some depth, a point of difference between something behind and something in front. Some light. We want to illuminate these forms and this depth. And then material. I want to get a sense that my rocks are rocks and made of hard stuff like rocks, and my water is flowing and liquid and fluid and breaking apart. So form, depth, light, and material. So those first 4 considerations, this is going to be line and shape. That's my initial consideration. We talked about that with our composition with the drawing, the underlying drawing. Then tone. value, how light something is, how dark something is. I use the word tone. It's interchangeable with value. Then our next consideration is color. And then finally, edge, how one thing meets another. By the way, one of the reasons I start with the background, work my way forward, is because it helps me with my edge quality. And here with some of these distant forms, in order to get it to push away and go back in space a little more, is that I have a little bit of softness across that edge. So I'm going to be playing up with some points of difference between some hard edges and some softer edges. We can really play with that and push that in the block end. All right, do you ever paint on primed MDF board? Brian, sometimes I'll use MDF, but I really prefer to put it on linen and then adhere the linen to the MDF. MDF in and of itself is not considered archival, and it's just not a great quality panel. I mean, it's nice and convenient, it's really cheap, it could be great for practice panels. I know of a lot of professional artists that use it, but I kind of cringe when I hear people using MDF because it's just, yeah, it's not archival. So you want to really prime that as best you can and cover that with a good layer of gesso or primer before attempting to paint on that. Now, I'm just taking my cues from my reference, and let's go back to our wide shot, and let's see, is my wide shot gonna, yep, I've got it still. Good, good, good. Let's get that palette on there so you can see what I'm doing. As I come forward, I'm gonna be dropping that tone. I'm not worried about any details or anything. I'm just going for that initial dark. Let's just get that in there, and then we'll go through and we'll start to manipulate some of that distant rock. And again, I better get a wiggle on to make sure I get through this initial block in here. I use primarily through my block in, I'm using, it doesn't matter if it's a still life or a landscape or a seascape, it always seems to be these three colors, burnt umber, white, and ultramarine blue. This is what really drives that value dynamic in my paintings. And so the ultramarine blue and burnt umber, when mixed together, make a very dark, neutral black. Now, it's not quite a pure black. It's a little lighter tonally than pure black, but I prefer it to black because the color is somewhat alive. Black, I find, deadens my painting, so I don't have it out on my palette. But burnt umber and ultramarine blue do a really good job. Tonally, they annihilate one another. In terms of color, they seem to neutralize one another. And it's just brilliant for creating that tonal vibe right off the bat. Now we're looking through a lot of light and atmosphere, and so naturally that means that these rocks in the midground are going to start to haze out, hence the lighter tone. We could amplify that with a glaze after our painting's dry, but down here in the foreground, we're not looking through as much misty atmosphere from these crashing waves against these rocks, and so our tonal values are going to start to be a lot deeper as we move forward. Now, I take Danielle's point about this being quite dark, so we'll see if we can create something that's going to work. But I do like me a nice dark foreground, and again, when you look at the old masters, just check out how dark some of their paintings were. Okay, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but check out Alexandre Calumet. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I had a friend of mine who's from France, shout out to Bourouin and Catalina, who joined us on the plein air tour. But he told me how to pronounce that artist name, and I cannot remember how to pronounce it. So I'm just going to butcher it. But Alexandre Calumet, fantastic landscape paintings, but a lot of his seascapes, very dark. Very dark. Another one of my favorites is Themistocles von Eckenbrecher. I know I mispronounced that one, but brilliant, brilliant seascapes, and a ton of dark, which allows the light to come bursting through. So yes, this is going to get quite dark indeed. How do you get the gesso really smooth? Seaside Nomads, this will just come down to your your technique for applying it, but I don't use gesso because I'm buying pre-primed linen, so I just cut that step out of my process. I buy a really good quality pre-primed linen. There's nothing that I do to it before I put on that initial imprimatura, which is a combination of just pigment, a bit of pure gum turpentine, and a little bit of liquid original. I apply that, I rub it back thoroughly with a rag, so it's just a mere stain on the canvas. And then I let that dry, and then I start painting. You can start painting almost immediately if you rub enough of it off. When I painted on a styrofoam poster board for practice once because I didn't want to waste the board, turned out better than planned. Is it too late to make it more archival? Olivia, that's going to be a little bit difficult because, you know, that ground, you're not going to be able to do anything else to that ground. So just maybe display it in such a way that you're going to protect the edges of the board. So maybe you could put it behind glass or make sure it's framed so you don't ding or knock the edges, because a lot of deterioration or wear could start to show up from edges or corners. So that would just make sure that you protect it a little better. How do you get a constant flow of oil rather than reapplying every 2 to 3 brush strokes? Well, actually, Isabella, if you watch the palette and how much time I spend in the palette versus how much time I'm spending on the canvas, I am reapplying every 2 to 3 strokes. I am. So this is just something that I'm doing because I find that it's just something that, well, let's talk about it, shall we? Let's talk about it. So one of the things that I've been looking for in recent years is a little more of a painterly vibe. And so there's about 4 things, and again, let's see if I can remember these off the top of my dome, but there's 4 things that I'm really thinking about and I'm trying to weigh up as I go. And while I talk to you about this, I'm just going to mix up a nice violet color. Quinacridone magenta, it's actually something I was using in the sky, if you recall. I'm mixing into that a little bit of ultramarine blue, a little bit of cobalt blue, knocking the tone down with a bit of burnt umber, and just a little bit of a violet. Why violet? I'm seeing evidence of this violet in some of my reference down here, and I just want to apply this across the front of some, not all, but some of these rocks. I've been working in zones. I painted in some of these darker shadows of these rocks. And I think where the rocks have been lapped by the waves, they've got a slight slick wetness to them, and they're reflecting a bit of that sky, but it seems to show up as a bluish violet. So just a touch of that quinacridone magenta will bring that look. Okay, so I've been trying to get thicker, more expressive brushwork in my paint and really use the texture. So this is why reloading that brush has really helped and one of the things that I'm focusing on. But in order to get something that looks a little more painterly, I would start with increasing the size of your brush. Generally, I use a brush in my block-in that is a little bigger than I feel comfortable with. So for the size of this painting, I mean, it's a relatively big brush, and that has allowed me to cover ground pretty fast. There are faster painters. It's not a race. Whatever gets you there. I know that there's a lot faster painters out there than I. But it allows me to travel relatively quickly and at least get the block-in done in one comfortable sitting. Then, the next thing is the volume of paint. I'm making a concerted effort to try and mix up more paint and more volume whilst maintaining control with my mix of colors. So with a bigger brush and a little more paint, now that's most of the way there in terms of creating a painterly look and moving relatively quickly. Then, how many strokes we actually apply. This is important too. Now, I was just away on tour where we hosted about 26 of our students across 2 tours here in the South Island of New Zealand. It was an amazing trip of a lifetime. It was just awesome. I did see Terry in the chat here, and I think a couple of others. Camera check. Yep, still recording tomorrow. Thank you so much. I did see Terry Hirsch in the chat. Terry, how'd you find the tour, buddy? But we just did this tour, and one thing I noticed is that a lot of my students initially were continually dabbing at the surface without reloading that brush. So generally speaking, I try to make 2 to 3 big gestures or movements per brush stroke. I might get a little bit fiddly and scrubby here and there in the block end, but generally 2 or 3 passes with that brush before attempting to reload. So 2 to 3, reload, make another 2 or 3, and that tends to get a little bit of nicer painterly brushwork. But then finally, your flow of paint is an important consideration. And that flow is given by a touch of liquid original, or sometimes you can improve the volume by adding in just a touch of liquid impasto. But regardless, the viscosity of the paint, how thick or thin it is going to be a vital consideration. So this is something that I think about a bunch. Now, this is where I could get into some trouble with what we were talking about previously with aberration, human order and pattern where it wouldn't ordinarily exist. I do have some kind of pattern here. I just don't want anything that appears unnatural and mechanical. QQQ from Jeff. Probably a dumb question. Not at all, Jeff. No such thing, bro, when we're talking about painting. But after you're done with your painting and remove the tape, what's your next steps before framing it? Brilliant question. So the next steps for this will be, I'll remove that tape once the painting's dry. And so I've got a couple more layers of paint to do. So I'm going to finish this thing up in tomorrow's live stream on the exclusive Academy live stream. Link in the description below to check that out. And this is where I'm going to be finishing off this painting. And if you're watching this live stream at some point in the future, then you'll find the live stream replay on the library in the Tish Academy. So check that out. Again, top link in the description down below. But what I'm going to do after tomorrow's live stream is I'll probably do a 3rd and a 4th layer in paint to finish this thing off. And then I will remove the tape, give the whole thing a coat of retouch varnish, and then let it dry for a couple of weeks, and then ship it off to tomorrow's winner, whoever is going to be winning this original painting. Now, if it was for a client, again, I would leave it to dry for a couple of weeks to make sure I had a good touch dry after applying that retouch varnish. And you can apply the retouch varnish after a few days. You just want a really good surface dry. It won't be dry all the way through because oil paint will take a really long time. But the beauty of that retouch is it will even up the surface, and it will allow for a really decent dry. It'll allow that oil paint to breathe through that layer of varnish, I'm trying to say. Sorry, difficult doing 2 things at once, trying to paint and read the chat and think at the same time. But if you think I'm doing an okay job juggling all this stuff and the technology and making sure that I'm recording, all while flying solo here in the studio, if you think I'm doing an okay job, do me a huge favor, hit the like button for me. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. It makes a huge difference. So hit that like button, make sure you subscribe, click that notification bell so you're notified when I drop another video. We're just a little over an hour down, and I've got 2 to go. We're making good time here. I really have appreciated some of those questions. Great question there, Jeff. So thank you for your questions. Keep them coming. If you've got a question, just make sure you type in 3 Qs, 3 capital Qs for question, question, question. This just allows me to see it in the live chat as we're going. And I'll take a quick sip of water and answer another question here. How do you create variety with painting rocks? Asks Noah. Noah, that is a wonderful question. That's a really great question, my friend. The way you do it is just by trying to be conscious about your distribution of shapes, okay? Generally what I'm doing is I'm thinking about my shapes in terms of big, medium, and small. I have collections of lots of small stuff, and I might group that collection of small, let's say over here, this variety of violet shapes. And the more you do this, by the way, Noah, the better you get at it. So I've got a little bit of a selection here of small shapes. Also variety of shapes. So some shapes are longer and thinner. Some shapes are flatter and fatter. And so you just want to make sure that you break it up. Now, even so, Even though I'm trying my best to be random, I know I'm creating that human order and pattern. Why? Because I'm a human. I know I'm going to do that. But I'm just trying to be consciously aware of it as I go. And if I see something that feels a little bit too repetitive, I'll just go ahead and break it. Now, there's an artist that I want to give you this name. If you're not familiar with this artist's work, look him up, start a file on this artist. And I really encourage all my students on the Academy as well to start files on art heroes from the past as a way to help us learn. You know, success leaves clues. If you want to get what they got, you got to do what they did. Pay attention to what the masters did. And there's an Australian landscape master named Arthur Streeton. And so my Aussies in the house right now will know who Streeton is, no doubt. Streeton, S-T-R-E-E-T-O-N, Streeton. And Arthur Streeton is one of the members of the Heidelberg School, so it's a group of impressionist painters in Australia. And he had a way of painting rocks and rocky slopes and rocky forms in a way that felt natural, but his paintings felt effortless, like they were almost breathed onto the canvas. So I learned a lot by looking at his work, either as a print in a book or an original. I've been fortunate to have seen several originals while I spent a number of years, about 25 years, living in Australia. So any opportunity I got to go to the museum or one of the regional galleries, I took that opportunity. I spent time in front of those paintings. I was like, what the heck are these guys doing? Why do these paintings look so good? So studying those paintings really helped me in learning a little more about distribution of shapes and varying our shape size, shape angles. And this is, by the way, one of the reasons I'm using the dagger, because it's allowed me to cut these shapes. The other thing, though, that's really helped is you've noticed that as I've gone across this foreground and established some of the darks down here in the foreground, I've actually created some areas of light, created some areas of dark, but the two are not necessarily meeting just yet. I've created things in zones. For instance, look at the highlight on this rock. Well, this is going to be a highlight, but I've left it void. I've only established a shadow here. So this is another thing that helps me create that randomness of shape distribution. That is correct, Danielle, OG. That is the name of the artist, yep. And there's Balsam. I got to go. Join Tish Academy if you're serious about taking your art to the next level. Thank you for the shout out there, Balsam. Top link in the description down below. Do you ever create any paintings that are not so realistic, more fun-made, made-up worlds or scenes? Daystar, great question. I'm glad I caught that question too, because you didn't put the QQQ in front of it, but that's all good. That's all good. So you're kind of making up some of the rocks, correct, Lori? But hey, great question, Daystar. I will be doing that, but to be honest, every time I paint a landscape, it is an exercise in making something up. So I'm using a little bit artistic license here. Hopefully I've hit the right points, the right little visual notes that somebody who knows this landscape will go, hey, that's Kaikoura. I remember when I was visiting New Zealand, driving up that Kaikoura coast, it looked just like that morning. Or that reminds me of this place or that place. So hopefully I've hit just the right notes. But there's a lot in my scenes that is made up and not quite, shall we say, accurate. But that's okay. I think we're painters, right? And painters got to paint. What we got to do is think, compose, feel our way, and think about this as something in its own right, not necessarily adhering to a specific time and place or a photograph. Nice to see you, Oda. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you. A true artist doesn't stick to only paintings, landscapes, and portraits. New Force, okay. I know lots of artists who just stay in their lane because they're driven and inspired by what they do. And for some people, it's just painting cowboys and cumulus clouds. And by the way, that's not a dig at anybody if you're thinking that, because I can think of an artist right now who's doing amazing things, is totally inspired and totally stays in his lane. And one of the nicest guys you'll talk to is Mr. Mark Maggiore. I haven't seen him do much outside of that scope, but I wouldn't take anything away from him as an artist. I think he's a fantastic artist for sticking with one subject. So I think you just have to go artistically where your interest leads you. And don't feel limited. I think that's the main thing, is to maintain authenticity. And authenticity, all that is simply following the voice that's inside. And if that tells you all I want to paint are flowers that are growing up between cracks in the sidewalk because that's the only thing that inspires me, then you do you. That's all good. God made us all different so that we could all explore those things that are within us. And so if you're wondering about the things that I paint, I only go where my interest leads me. Now, speaking of Mark Maggiore, check out the podcast that I did with Mark. I've actually recorded 2 episodes with Mark. I have a podcast called The Creative Endeavor, and this is where I interview other artists. I want to talk to the best of the best. People are out there absolutely smashing it artistically and kicking some major career goals. And I found Mark to be incredibly generous with his time, genuine, authentic, and really inspiring. You know, not only artistically, but from an art business standpoint, good night. The guy is doing amazingly well, so good for him. But I've also talked to dozens of other artists. We're coming close to our 100th episode. So if you haven't already listened to that podcast, it's called The Creative Endeavor. You're going to find that on all audio platforms. And also it's got its own YouTube channel, so check it out. All right. But Daystar, to answer that question a little bit more, what I would really, what I'm really going to get into here very soon is a little more imaginative realism. But in terms of fantasy as a genre, maybe not, although I really do love it as a genre. I just don't know if I'm going to be doing any. Anyway. Yeah, New Force, I tend to agree. I think that's pretty good. And I tend to apply that creative thinking all across my life as well. I can't help it. It's just the way my brain works. All right, would you say landscapes are easier to learn the basics for beginners compared to human portraits? Happy Jalapeno, I think you might be onto something there. I would tend to agree. I think portraits, well, maybe that's just because that's what I've gravitated towards. I think portraits can be a little bit tricky, but yeah, I would tend, if you're just starting out, I would give landscapes a go. I would learn the ropes. I'd get your head around the material, the medium, and then jump into portraits, because there is a lot to know with portraits. Landscapes, I would have to say, and some in the chat might disagree with me here, but landscapes I think are a little more forgiving. When we're painting a portrait, we've got a lot of other things to consider, and creating a likeness, it's going to take a bit of skill and technique, and that takes time to develop. But if portraits are your thing, hey, jump in the deep end, go for it. But for me, my personal trajectory, part of my art story was I did start with landscapes before I attempted to do portraits, and I had a pretty good understanding of the medium before jumping in. So I've applied some of these shadows here. I'm not quite ready to get into the highlights of these rocks yet. I think the next thing we're going to have to do here is the light across this wave and getting in some of this water color here. If you're enjoying the live stream so far and you haven't done this yet, then please do me a huge favor and click the like button. Pleasure to have your company here in the studio. This scene, if you're just tuning in, is inspired by the Kaikoura Coast, the east coast of the South Island of New Zealand. Agreed, Sam Tonks. Agreed. I think I would love to talk to Jeremy Lipking. I would love to. I've reached out to him, and hopefully we can line something up. Does my wife paint? She's a great appreciator of art, but she does not, Terry. What do you think of art such as a banana stuck to a wall? What's your opinion on painting Phil E? Okay, I gotta shout my brother out here. We had a wonderful gentleman, now a friend of mine. His name's Scott, and Scott gave me a gift, and Scott, I've got it up in my studio now, and he came on one of our art tours, and he gave me this painting to put up in his studio. So, and if you don't get the joke, like I bitch about this artwork, not this painting. I love this painting. Yes, it's a painting. Look at that. He's done an amazing job. It's so realistic. But I bitch about this particular artwork a bunch because it drives me nuts. What's my opinion on it? I think it's crap, and I think it's important when you see crap, call it out for being crap. I don't think it's art. I think it's non-art, but this painting is art, and it's friggin' awesome. So shout out to Scott. I love this thing. So there you go. And if you want to argue about, hey, you just don't get it, then okay, I'm happy to accept that and admit freely, I don't get it. I don't get it. But I would say I don't really think there's anything there at all, personally. But again, you're free to make whatever art you want to make. It does annoy me a little bit when it gets so much attention. So that's just my opinion, okay? So, but I don't want to silence those voices. I don't want it to go away. I like that it's here because I do also, on the other hand, think it adds an enormous amount of depth to the overall conversation about art. And without really bad art, we wouldn't have really good art. By the way, I got to shout somebody else out who I've recorded a podcast with, and that is Justin Bua. It's somebody that I follow on Instagram. Maybe you're following Justin Bua on Instagram as well, but Justin is a wonderful artist, but very thought-provoking Instagram page where he puts out shorts and reels on his thoughts and views on the state of the art world. So check him out, but very thought-provoking discussion we had on modern art and AI and all that good stuff. All right, so I'm mixing up a little bit of this distant color here for the water. A very simple color arrangement in this painting. And notice how I'm using the real estate of my palette. And when I'm adhering to the chromatic order, here's the thing. These colors I keep to the outside of the palette. I've seen all sorts of studio practice where you're putting paint right in the middle of your mixing area. Keep that real estate clean. I'm going to want to come in here and manipulate and adjust some of these colors, so I'm not trying to manipulate one pile of paint as I go. I try to use use space. And so when I'm mixing a new colors here with my oils, what I'm doing is I'm just working into the edges of areas, but I'm trying to have this color occupy its own space. But I still have room around the palette to mix some other variations. Well, there you go, Brian. Bananas are not archival, says Jim Meeker, and I agree 100%. I mean, that's true. Yeah. Anyway. So, hello, Andrew. You are my inspiration, even though my style is not like you. That's all good. Hey, nice to meet you. Keshva Chandra. Sorry if I mispronounced that, but nice to meet you. Great demo. And thank you, Joseph. Appreciate you. Also love your podcast. Thank you, Seaside Nomads. Awesome. Okay, again, if you've got a question, just go ahead and put a QQQ in front, like what Robert Smith has done here. Andrew, do you think you could challenge yourself with painting, with a painting dealing with light, like Sorolla, while maintaining your contemporary or realistic style? Well, I do hold Sorolla in very high regard. I love Sorolla. So in terms of light, hopefully we're going to create a sense of light here. You'll tell me, but I do love me some Sorolla. He's one of the greats. So with this color here, it's really a grayed out, desaturated. I've lifted the tone, but a blue color. I've used a bit of that cobalt teal, a touch of the cobalt blue, a touch of my ultramarine blue. There's a hint of quinacridone magenta coming through, but it's really heavy on the teal with white. And because I'm mixing in some of those grays that I was using before, it's knocked the edge off the chroma. And so let's go to our close cam here. And so as I bring this forward, the chroma is getting a little more intense than that sky. But let's go ahead and cut that flat line across that horizon. We can obscure it a bit later so we don't get one of those exiting vectors I was telling you about. Now I'm thinking somewhat strategically. I know that this painting, this is going to dry. I'm going to go over it with a second layer. I'm actually going to be going over with the layer the very next day. And that second layer of paint, it's going to have a little bit of tooth and texture to it, you see. And that's going to allow the next layer to hang off this framework, this scaffolding that I'm building right now. So I have a little bit of texture given to me by the Liquid Impasto medium. But I don't want anything that resembles distracting texture, so big, heavy ridge lines along boundaries or edges. So you'll notice that as I lay down a deposit of paint here, I go back and I adjust. Now I really do want this area of ocean to just go away. And you'll notice here that as I draw that blade of the dagger across that surface, you're able to achieve a pretty flat line. No ruler needed. Now, one of the things that's been a game changer for me here in the studio has been a dental assistance chair. So that's what I'm sitting on right now here. I've actually got this armrest on it that a dental assistant would have. You see that there? And this allows me to just put my elbow down and I can steady my hand. No, it's a little bit low for me though, so I'll make a fist and I'll put my elbow in my fist. And then that will allow me to steady my hand and cut with the dagger a reasonably straight line. And I say reasonably straight, because it's not exactly straight. How do you stop paint bleeding under the masking tape? Well, I find that the thickness, Ron, of the paint, it doesn't bleed at all. And I think if you're getting any kind of bleeding, you might be using water medium. You know, you would definitely find this with watercolor or anything like ink or particularly watery acrylic. But with oils, not a problem. I'm going to get a perfectly pristine, clean edge when I lift that paper tape up, that masking tape. Please, for dark skin tone and for a warm background, I don't know the colors and I need to mix how to apply to. Null set, top link in the description down below. There's a portrait course and some demos there that you can find. Would you ever consider interviewing Chelsea Lang? Love Chelsea Lang, absolutely, Len. For sure I would. Yeah, she's got some great techniques and tips and things on YouTube. I've seen a few of her videos. Really admire what she's doing, and a wonderful painter too. So, yeah, love her videos and her delivery styles. It's really good. So, yep. All right, time to get into this a little bit. Now, as these waves lift up and curl, they start to reveal their true nature. They start to really reveal that underlying quality of the water. Now, the whole time in my hand, I'll hold this up to this camera, I've had these paper towels in my hand, and I wipe off my brush continually. And I'm about to do that again because I want to get some clean color out on my palette. This also helps me keep things clean in the studio. I've got pretty pristine brush. I don't have any paint on my handle. I don't get paint on my hand generally. And the paper towel, just wiping it off as I go, just helps me keep things nice and clean. So let's mix up a little bit of this wave color. And what I'm going to do is use a little bit of ultramarine blue, working into the edge of this pile that we have here, a little bit of cobalt teal, and a touch of phthalo green. We'll also add in a bit of burnt umber, some more liquid impasto, lift it out with a bit of white. And when I say the wave reveals its true nature, as it lifts up, we get to see that color of the ocean below as it starts to build. And so I'm thinking we're going to have a wave back here that is going to be somewhat of a breaker just before it's smacked into that rock. And this darkness that's coming through here, let's add a little chromium green oxide to it. Why not? The darkness that's coming through here is going to provide a point of contrast for the top lip of the curling wave that's immediately in front. But it helps me create some clean edges. If I start with whatever's furthest away, working my way forward, you'll notice that one edge starts to layer over the next, over the next, over the next, and I'm continually pushing the boundary of that upper edge. And so I'm able to create something a a little bit cleaner, work a little bit faster by just following that pattern. The other thing that's happening though, in terms of mixing colors on the palette, is I'm getting more saturated as I come forward, and so it's helping me actually control my color. Generally, I find things get out of hand if I start too saturated too quickly. And when I say saturated, I'm referring to the chroma, how intense the color is. So I gradually increase that saturation, that chroma, as I move forward. Right. Keep asking. It's difficult to see all the questions. Yeah. Keep asking. Thank you, Jim. Yeah, don't be worried about spamming me in this comment section. It is my goal that I get to everybody's question. But as you can see, painting, talking, dealing with the tech, drinking water. I won't be able to get to everybody's question. Generally, it's a little bit easier to get to all the questions in the Academy live streams, which I tried to do, don't I, Jim? But here in these public live streams, I don't even know how many people are watching live now. But if you are and you're enjoying it, then please do me a huge favor and hit that like button for me. And if you want to come back for more and see more live streams and be notified of the next live stream, make sure you click the subscribe button and the bell notification icon so you're notified when I go live next. Okay. Time for a camera check. It is indeed. Let's go ahead and refresh that. Thank you, Tamara. Appreciate you. There we go. Take 2. We're doing good on that camera. That take was well over an hour. Okay. So I've got a little bit of a wave here coming through. I'm going to turn my hat backwards just in case the peak on this baseball cap is getting in the field of view. Apologies, because my head will start to get into the frame. And so just let me know if I do that. I'll try and sit back a little bit. So this curling wave, let's get into this next. I really do love some of that color, and I think that what we're going to have is some of this bottle green nature drawing up. I'll just dry brush a bit of that in, but there's also a ton of white water through the foreground. And I tried to do a pretty good job finding this reference material and matching the light angles. But one thing I love about my reference is that we've got this, so I'm going to call it selective light. Like it's high lit only in a section, and there's a shadow being cast across the foreground. Kind of cool, kind of cool. So what I'm going to do first, before getting into the wave, is let's start painting that shadow in the foreground. I'll get my palette shot back here. And I'm going to go for a violet color here. Let's work down here and see if we can achieve a bit more of a cleaner color. And I'm just noticing this intensity of violet, but very light tone. Also, plenty of blue. When I say violet, it's not purple. It's just, it is mainly blue with just a hint of quinacridone magenta once again. Now, magenta, incidentally, magenta and cobalt teal work really well together. They're both slightly cool. They've got a cool bias to them. They mix together and make a very clean violet-y blue. So right here, I think what's going to happen is we'll have that shadow on this wave right here. So the white water crash foam spray of this wave. I just realized I didn't even have my palette off the screen. I apologize. But at least for the recording caught it. So the spray of this wave, this is going to cut across that horizon line. We got a little bit of a boom as it crashes over right there in the foreground. But that light, I think, is going to be shining through this scene. It's going to be more or less flat across that horizon, foreground, and then work its way up into that wave there. So everything south of this line here, I think that makes sense to me. Well, that's my story anyway. I'm sticking to it. But everything below that line, I think, we're going to make shadow. That could work. That could work. How do I renew my subscription? Cynthia, we got tech for that. We got, if you do me a huge favor, what I'll do is I will, if you get in touch with me via the contact form on my website, tischler.nz, that'll give us your email address, and we'll go into the back end and we can reset it for you there, Cynthia, okay? So I've got people there that are able to help on the tech side of things. Goodness knows I need help with the tech side of things. I just paint pictures. I just work here. So, what's my favorite color? Daystar. I don't have one. I'm a painter. I like all colors equally. How about that? At the moment, though, my favorite color is this violet color. I mean, come on, how good is that? Am I right? Look at that. So nice. So I'm just going to start to bring that down to the edge. And I've actually got quite a volume of paint. I know what you're thinking. That was more than 3 or 4 brush strokes. Yeah, but I had a lot of volume out of my brush there. And so that really helped me apply more paint. I'll just mix up a little bit more. I know you can't see the palette shot, but I'm sacrificing the palette shot to give you a nice angle here of the close-up. We've just gone over the halfway point in this live stream. I am in desperate need of caffeination. That's the one medium that I use here in the studio, is black coffee, because it really helps the paint flow. Maybe you're like me. I'm bringing that wet paint down to meet the edge of some of these rocks. It might seem a little abrupt at first, but we can adjust some of these shapes with this white water that I'm cutting in. But I'm pushing this paint here, pushing this as an edge, as a boundary, and just redefining and cutting the edge of that rock, creating something that looks natural, uneven, a little bit random, as a rock may. So I might just take a quick 5-minute break here. I don't have any intermission entertainment for you, or any music. But I'll be back in about 5 minutes with a cup of coffee, and we're going to go ahead and see this thing out. I feel good about this one, and in terms of progress, I think we'll make it. I think we'll make it. We'll get a completed block in anyway in this session, and I'll be finishing this painting off in tomorrow's live stream on the Academy. And one lucky viewer of that live stream will be selected at random and will win the original painting. And again, I do get asked, you know, what's a painting like this go for? I would sell this work once it's finished for around $4, $4.5, anywhere between 4 and 5. Be around there. $1,000, by the way, and that's USD. So, I hope you're enjoying it so far. If you are enjoying the live stream, you're getting a technique or two out of this lesson, then please do me a huge favor, hit that like button. Black coffee with butter? No, Lynn, I've given up the butter. Okay. And if I've missed your question, just have those ready for me when I get back from this short break. And before I go to break, I'll just take a quick minute and just let you know once again, if you're enjoying this live stream and you want to see more live streams just like this, every single week I go live on the Tish Academy. Tish Academy is my own online art school, and I should say, beg your pardon, I misspoke, it is our online art school because we built an exclusive community now of thousands of members who are taking their painting and drawing to the next level. There's some huge stuff that's happening this year. I cannot wait to share with you, but right now if you join, you're going to get access to hundreds of hours of content. There's over 350 hours of content in the content library right now, including full-length painting demonstrations. Every week I go live, as I mentioned, for the Academy VIP tier, I go live. There's critique videos as well. If you want to push your art business even further, there's an art business course there called the Creator Activator. And again, the best part is the exclusive community of like-minded people who are just in it to push their art even further. if you want to see what it's all about, go to Tish.Academy. There's the address right there at the bottom of the screen, Tish.Academy. Elevate your art today. Okay, I will leave that with you for 5 minutes. I will be right back, and I'm going to come back with a cup of coffee, and we'll carry on with this painting. All right, thanks for allowing that little announcement. Okay, hopefully I'm back. Hopefully you can hear me. Just let me know if you can hear me. And am I here on this one? Can you see me? Let's go to this one. I had a really great question there from Isabella. And thanks for allowing that brief little break there. Just need to get myself another cup of coffee. See me through the second half of this demonstration. And this question was from Isabella. I've been painting for a long time, but would like to make it as a professional now. What would your best advice be for starting out selling paintings? So I've said this before in my podcast and in my art business course, and I'm sticking to this. There's never been a better time to be an artist. There's a lot of opinions out there, a lot of people talking about this, and sometimes a lot of doom and gloom as well. And you also might be thinking, well, maybe it's too late for me. Everybody else seems to be doing this. The market's oversaturated. There's too much competition. And so I'm just going to continue to paint away in my studio and not worry about approaching this as a professional. There has never been a better time to be an artist than today. The amount of tools that we have at our disposal today makes it easier than ever. The barrier to entry is so much lower than it's ever been because the market, the world, everything has changed. Social media has connected the entire world, and this is your first point to be sharing your work, building what can best be described as a personal brand, but to put yourself out there without the need of going to a gallery. Now, galleries have their place. They have worked for me in the past. It's not something that I do now. I'm self-represented. But I have for many years previous worked with galleries and worked with galleries quite well and became pretty successful doing that. And it's still a valid way of working today, but you can definitely start right now building up an online presence, building up a portfolio, and putting your stuff on social media, definitely on Instagram and Facebook and things like that. So that's where I'd start. I'd start by building a portfolio and building your body of work. And there's a few places that you'll want to put that portfolio, but I would start uploading it to social media, and I'd also start with a website. So your website is going to be your central hub to your art business, to this endeavor. And so you're going to want to make sure that you put your best foot forward with your website, that it's clean, it's easy to navigate, it does something in particular, so namely it showcases your work, it says something about you, and then you also want through your website to collect something from the people visiting. I would suggest you get their email address and create a way that you can get in touch with them on a regular basis. This will be your key first step to building your market, is to create a list of leads, generally email, pretty powerful. Again, a lot of people don't really believe in email these days, but it's still something that is just so powerful and a really important vector for us in our particular business. Don't forget to turn the camera on. Camera is on, and I was recording that entire coffee break tomorrow, so there's going to be like 5 minutes of dead air from my editors to cut out of that, but that's all right. That's all right. So I would start there, but definitely go after quality. Make sure you're working on the quality of your offering, the quality of the product that you produce, and don't let up on that quality. So a good way to improve your quality is improve the quality of your materials, put more time into what you're creating. Don't rush it. And sometimes just by putting in just a little bit of extra love, care, and attention into what you're doing actually will set you apart from 90% of other artists out there. And I don't want to put down other artists. It's not what I'm saying. But I mean, you do see a general lack of care and quality out there. So if you would just care, if you would just put more into quality, and I haven't seen your work, Isabella, but if you just put more into quality, you will rise to the top. And it takes a long time to develop skills. You might be pretty far. I mean, from what you were saying there, you've been painting for years. You might be pretty far in your journey and probably have already developed some serious skill. But skill and quality, I mean, these are things that will help you stand out a little bit more. All right. What do I think of Gamblin artist oils? Gamblin make great oils. I don't use them personally, but I've heard great things about them. I do use other Gamblin products, some Gamblin mediums they're new for us, as well as Gamsol, my solvent that I use for cleaning. So yeah, good company. Yeah, lots of pros use Gamblin. Correct there, Jim Meeker? Hi all, someone knows at what age Andrew started painting. I started painting when I was very young, probably before I could talk. And then I ended up becoming a professional artist at the age of 21. So that was a full-time art with no other income at that point. So it was just supporting myself with my art at 21 years old. And I felt pretty proud of that. I still am in a way, but there's a young man in Colorado named Cody Oldham, who's a friend of mine, and he now has me whipped. He beat me to it. He's much younger than I was when I started, and he's great. He's bloody good. All right. Cool. All right, yeah, no worries, Isabella. No worries. All right, I'll carry on. Now, I'm just starting into the wave, and I'm thinking about this white water that's coming through. So let's get some of this in. Now, when it comes to white and creating a sense of light in our paintings, it's important to remember that white water is not necessarily white. I want to do something tonally here. So in terms of my value, and I want to drop the tone and not get out the top of the tonal range just yet. So I have a little saying. My, my Academy students right now, I know, are saying this to their screen. Save your tonal best for last. Yes, save your tonal best for last. That's what you want to do. Save the tonal best for last. The reason why is because I have a very limited range to travel within the painting. So I can only go as far as pure titanium white. As such, I need to make sure that whatever I'm mixing here, if I'm going to have that tone to be able to jump to, I don't use it right off the bat, right in the beginning. So I want to have some of that range, some of that room to go. What ends up happening is if I go there too quickly and I use too much white too early, there's no other room. There's nowhere to go. So this color here, I'm thinking about that light that's now cutting into the scene. It might not be as apparent at the moment, but there's a big rock or a big cliff over here that's casting a shadow across this foreground. I feel it. I'm looking at my reference material. I'm seeing some evidence that supports this. And so with this shadow being cast across the foreground, all I need to do is create a bit of a point of difference tonally speaking. So I've got a light gray here. I've used Crimnant's white, which is my lead-based white. There's a little bit of burnt umber in here. And I've gone for a bit of titanium, but I've used plenty of these other colors around, namely working in the top of this gray that was right here on my palette. And because it's a light gray, but lighter than the shadow, hopefully it'll start to communicate some of that light coming through. But I've got plenty of room to go for greater, brighter highlights. Now, let me just pull up a little bit more of this reference material. Oh, see, that's nice. All right. And I can create something pretty clean looking if I just stick to zones. What I mean by that is I kind of reserve that area for shadow, and then I have an area for highlight as well. Let's get this other brush out and start to define a little more this wave. Again, thanks so much for spending this time with me here in the studio. Really appreciate your company. Do me a huge favor, if you haven't already, please click that like button. And make sure you're subscribed and have that bell notification clicked so you're notified when I upload another video or go live. You'll get a notification. But if you're enjoying it so far, if you've gotten something out of this, whether you're watching the live version right now with me here in the studio, or if you're watching the replay at some point in the future, make sure you click that like button for me. Really appreciate it. Is my paint starting to get tacky at this point, asks Lori. Will it be somewhat dry by tomorrow? It should be most of the way surface dry by tomorrow, but I'm not noticing any stickiness or tackiness at this stage. Generally, it starts to set up after about 6 to 8 hours. So probably generally towards the end of a day's painting for me. And I really hope I'm not getting in the way of that camera, but because I feel like I might be and my head's getting in the way, let me just adjust this camera here, shift this out the way, and then readjust right here. I'll tell you what, I'm juggling the tech and the talk here in this live stream. So for a numpty like me who's not much of a techie guy, if you appreciate that, click that like button. But thanks for being here. Good questions. Your ability to paint and talk literally blows me away. Master multitasker. Yeah, but I can't walk and chew gum at the same time, Ashley, so I struggle with that one. Go figure. All right. Good fun. So you'll notice here that I've actually knocked it down considerably. And when I say knocked it down, like the tone is very gray. I'm really holding back. It's kind of like entering that boxing ring whilst having one hand tied behind your back. Now, as it scoops upwards, I'll pull up on my iPad that other bit of reference material. As it scoops up into the curl of the wave, it really does seem to reflect a little bit more light, so it gets tonally a little bit lighter. So let's get some of that in there. In order to achieve that, I need to get a little more white out on my brush, and hopefully I'll remember to get rid of that palette shot while I do this. But this is the area I'm working in right here. I'm out of Krimnitz white. I better go ahead and get some more of that out on my palette. But nothing reflects light like thick white paint. And see the point of difference between those two? But I'm still so far away from the top of that tonal range. Really holding back here. But hopefully, if I make a mark like this, you'll see a point of difference between the lightness there and what I had achieved previously. And we still got more room to travel. Now, it's still pretty blue. I have yet to add some warmth to this. I might reserve that for the second sitting. But what I want to start to do is gradually, as that wave builds and starts to curl over, we'll draw up into the scoop of that wave, lifting the tone, working the edge, and creating an even gradient between the two. I knew I'd do that. I knew I'd forget to remove the palette. I'm so sorry. Okay. I've had no professional training. With the cameras, anyway. Let's get out some more Krimnitz. I'm gonna need Krimnitz. Now, the thing with the Krimnitz is that it really does help you build the volume without getting that chalkiness that we were talking about earlier. The titanium can be really chalky, but the Krimnitz white just allows for flow, for volume. But it just doesn't allow for that chalkiness. And again, the Krimnitz white and the titanium white, I keep those side by side. And every time I get out paint, by the way, I don a pair of nitrile gloves so I don't get paint on my fingers. But I keep that Krimnitz to the right, titanium to the left. Even though they look the same, they both do very different things. All right, there we go. All right, in my country, lead white is forbidden. Hey, it's illegal. You can't buy it here either, but you can get it sent to you, LVDE. So it is annoying that it has been banned in New Zealand as well, but you can get it sent to you. You're just not allowed to sell it. But I can tell you about it and say, hey, you should be able to, unless a law in your country forbids this, which might be the case. So check your laws. Don't break the law. But Eric Silver over there at BlueRidgeOilPaint.com will happily ship you a tube of Krimnitz white. By the way, my Academy members get 10% off. There's a special code for my Academy members. And they get 10% off at the checkout. So if you want to get that as well as being a chance to win this original painting when I finish it off tomorrow, in tomorrow's epic 5-hour live stream, then go ahead and click that link in the description down below. Check it out. All right, so a little bit of sea spray here. I'm going to work into that shadow of the rock, just blending slightly. We can actually do a lot of blending, a lot of good here in the initial block-in layer. But some of this can be also achieved with a bit of a glaze. And glazing is something that I love to do to drive the realism in my paintings. For surface quality and details, it's second to none. All right, Kremnitz White, Alexandri, Kremnitz. It's called Kremnitz. There it is there. Kremnitz. Yeah, 5 hours, Seaside Nomads. That's right, 5 hours. All right. Absolutely, Remnon. I will talk about the Academy again right at the end of this demonstration. So give me about another hour, and I'll plug it again. I want to make sure that I don't plug it too much because we're here to paint a wave. So we best get on with it. Now I'm going to go around the edge of this wave with some of this lighter tone, and maybe if I just adjust my ISO here, you'll be able to see it a little bit. Now the foreground's going to get a bit darker, but hopefully through that new camera setting, you're able to see what's going to happen here with this wave. So I'm starting off with some of that white water, and again, white water's not white. Save your tonal best for last. Knock the edge tonally off that white water so that you got some room to go. Over here at this side, we're going to have a little bit of a break in that wave. Maybe it's hit a rock. Regardless, it's kind of blowing up into a explosion of sea spray and catching that sunlight. Maybe, just maybe, I might carry that highlight on a little bit. I'm going to try and keep those edges of my rocks nice and firm. And so I've left this out until now. Let's go ahead and paint a little bit of that green that's coming through. So to mix the green, there's actually a handful of colors here on my palette that really help with that bottle green nature of a curling wave. Let me just adjust my wide angle here. Make sure you can see what we're doing. There we go. One more little lever here to manipulate. There we go. How's that? That's all right. Okay. So to get that bottle green nature of our wave, cobalt teal, second to none. It's awesome for this. And also a little bit of phthalo green, but I don't want to go too far with my color and my saturation. Oh, Olivia Wells says she visited my gallery last month. Thank you. You came all the way to Lawrence? Are you New Zealand based there, Olivia? Hey, Brent from Virginia is in the house. Brent joined us on one of our plein air painting tours that was happening in February, just gone. Welcome to the studio, my brother. How are you? Speaking of which, I'm sure Brent has got his dental assistant's chair, just like I've got mine here with that custom armrest. Look at that. So if you're looking for a chair, I've had so many people message me afterwards just going, dude, that chair was a game changer. Built-in armrest, how good, how good. So a little bit of cobalt teal. I'm going to use just a touch. I'm using more and more that chromium green oxide, but it is really pungent, so go carefully. I'm going to increase the green nature of the wave, by the way, because the wave in Kaikoura is a little greener than the wave in Albany. Pay attention to your colors. There's going to be some level of local color. And so that's generally the combination. It's mainly cobalt teal. I've used a little bit of cobalt blue and ultramarine blue, a little bit of chromium green oxide, and a touch of phthalo green. So a few colors in there. Lift the tone with a bit of white to achieve a bit of that green nature, maybe a little nickel yellow deep. But because chromatically this is the most saturated thing on our painting so far, it's really going to stand out. Even though we look at the palette and it seems pretty grayed out and desaturated. All right, let's go to the close-up shot and bring this thing home. Would I consider doing any painting tours in Dubai? I've never been to Dubai, but maybe one day. Never say never. Hey, Rayleigh's in the house, and Jen's in the house. And shout out to Scott. There's Scott. Scott's in the house. Awesome. Good to see you, Scott. I hope you don't mind, Scott, but I did put up the painting here in the live stream. I love that painting, brother. I really think it'd make an awesome t-shirt. So, with the light angle being as it is, it's cutting past this white water of this curling wave. The curling wave is then casting a shadow over on the curl upwards. And so there's a little bit of something going on there, almost like an eye right there in the wave. So I need to mix a lighter color here, slightly lighter tone. So I'll describe to you what I'm doing, since I don't have that palette shot up at the moment, but I've just added a little bit of white to that previous combination and a little bit of cobalt teal. Now, who's painting along while I'm painting? Is anybody doing that? Now, again, just a slight point of difference between the two, and I should communicate a little bit of that sense of light shining on here. I mix up some color, I go back, reload the brush. I don't expect any given brush stroke to do too much. I'm continually reloading. This is allowing me to create a bit more of a painterly look. Now, generally speaking, as these waves start to curl over and break, the white water starts to separate, spread apart, and we can start to see what's in that water, the quality of that water below. This is an opportunity for me to really blow it and get into that aberration and mechanical pattern that I was talking to you about before. So let's think about that very carefully as we proceed. So my first step is to get that curl of the wave. Now you can see also that the direction of the stroke is doing a little bit of something towards communicating the shape of that wave. So this contoured effect with a bit of texture in your brushwork does help communicate some three-dimensionality. I've dropped the tone slightly, just working towards the top of the wave. This is only the first little bit, though. We got something else that's going to help us define this shape even more. All right. Yeah, Permaculture Kiwi says in Kaikoura they have whale watching. It's a beautiful place. It is indeed. There are a bunch of whales on this coast. And a lot of seals too. Camera check. Thank you, Tamara. Yep, still going. Still going. And if you're wondering what's going on there, I am recording this for my Academy members. I might just change up my brush slightly here, get out a clean brush. This is an Eclipse long filbert. I'm going to mix up a little bit of violet color, a little bit of a deeper tone, and get some softer marks that are here inside this curling wave. Now, in order to communicate anything about the shape of this wave, I got to think now about the applicator. Like what am I using here to draw in some of these strokes? I want to get this white water to feel like it's being drawn up into this wave and then curling back around. I've only got a very small area to play with right here. Now, before I do though, this part of the wave is breaking over. I'm going to make a mark here and then drag that down into that curling white water to hopefully give this a bit of an impression like it's just dumping right here. That surf is coming down and boom, a little bit of a splash. I'm not sure what I'm doing with that area just yet. I kind of want it to go away. I think I'm going to change my mind about where that's going in terms of splash. Let me get up in here and just brush that out for now. Blur it out, diffuse it. We can come back later and do something with it. Not worried about it. But I like having some aspect of that wave curling over and dumping over. As long as it doesn't form a really abrupt straight line exiting the canvas, I think it'll be okay. Ron Anderson, could someone in Australia or New Zealand please tell me where to buy? What are you buying, Ron? If you do QQQ at the start, so Louise, where's Louise? What's a cheap alternative to cobalt teal you'd recommend to someone on a budget? Well, you can mix it. I'd use a little bit of phthalo blue and a little bit of phthalo green and titanium white, and you could come close, but it's really not the same. But you could come close with those. Did you ever complete the 100 head challenge? No, I'm just working on number 30 now. I'm still going though. And I think that's it. Okay. Canvas. Oh, canvas. I buy mine. Ron, you're in Australia, right? If you're in Australia, you can go to Chapman & Bailey. That's where I buy mine from. I have Chapman & Bailey ship it to me here in New Zealand. And even though it's coming all the way from Australia, it's still a cheaper price. Okay. Little bit of a shadow cast across this water. I'll paint that in with my Eclipse long filbert. We've gotten most of the canvas covered so far, haven't we? That's a plus. A couple little stripes of the imprimatur showing through. I've got my major zones of color blocked in, and that's what you block in. That's what you want, is you want to have everything established compositionally. I can see where this is going. And so now I just need to make sure that we dial it in and do the fine tuning and that nothing seems out of place. But even if it is, even if I make another decision at some point or want to move in a different direction, maybe shift the wave, shift a rock, I can always do that in the next sitting. I've just gotten a notification right now on my computer that the live stream is going to stop abruptly if I don't free up disk space. So can you just give me 1 second there, folks? And I will do this right now before it abruptly ends. Bear with me. Fortunately, it saves everything in a folder here. All right. Did I lose you? Am I still live? Hopefully I'm live still. Okay. Crisis averted. I hope. I hope. Okay. Am I still here? You can still hear me? You can still see me? Cool. Great. You know what? I'm going to save this for the very end. We're going to work on that at the end. And if I have to go slightly over time, I will. I want to work in some of these highlights here in the rocks before we go much further. But we've gotten most of it blocked in. Now, I can't remember who it was. Was it Danielle or who was it that was saying, didn't know about the dark stripe of rock across the foreground? Is it okay? Is it working for you? Let me know. I'm going to get out some fresh paper towel. By the way, these things have been worth their weight in gold. These are cleaning wipes. Very good at getting any paint off fingers. I got a little bit of paint on my fingers, so that'll get that right off of there. Some fresh paper towel. And let's move on to these rocks. Now, with the rocks, we're going to make up a really nice warm color. That is going to be a combination of mainly burnt umber and white. We'll kick it with some transparent red oxide and transparent yellow oxide. But let's start off in that background and start working our way forward. Now, I'm going to use the same brush that I was using for my highlights. Wipe that sucker off. And let's just use that dagger once more. No, actually, you know what? Let's not do that. Let's get out a new dagger brush. Ah, that's what we want. For my plein air kit, another 3/8 of an inch bristle dagger. Burnt umber, titanium white, Crimnance white. I know you can't see the palette right now, but I'll just call them out. A little bit of transparent red oxide, transparent yellow oxide. A little more white. And if I have a point of difference, tonally speaking, between this and that shadow color, then hopefully it'll stand out a little bit. Now a little bit of that nickel yellow and nickel yellow deep adds a really nice warmth to this color. And if I load up just the edge of my dagger, I can create something that's broken, random, and feels reminiscent of these rocks that are just continually getting pummeled here by these waves on the Kaikoura coast. So I'm mixing in just a touch of transparent red oxide and transparent yellow oxide. It's a little heavier on the white side at the moment because I want it to feel a little more washed out, a little bit more pale. And this will give me a nice point of difference in contrast as I bring this forward towards the viewer and get a little more saturated. Again, when we come forward towards the viewer, we want to increase our chroma and our saturation. This is what helps us create that illusion of depth. Thank you, good vibes. I'm going to take that as a great compliment. Right. A few little random highlights here against the background. Let me let's just lift out another one. I'm just going to pick out one. I feel a highlight somewhere in here. I don't see much evidence to support that. There's a little bit here in my reference, but I'm feeling something there. And then with this higher cliff, where's my wide view? There's my wide view. This higher cliff here in the background. You get a little bit of that feeling of light coming down into the scene. So then this rock here, what about that rock? And maybe even the side of that rock there. A little more nickel yellow deep, a little more titanium white, transparent yellow oxide, transparent red oxide. The edge of the dagger here, trying to get my head out the way. Sorry again if my head obscures your view, but it happens. Try not to let any one of those lines, just get too diffused by continuing to dab at it. Generally with a highlight, what I want to do is make a couple of strokes and then reload to make sure that the edge of the brush has got a pretty nice heavy load of paint across it. That's going to create some cleaner marks with some sharper edges. Now, the highlight actually, I think, is going to be pretty close to the color of the imprimatura of this rock here. Drop it with a little bit of burnt umber, lower that value, add a little bit of transparent red oxide to it. That'll bring it a little bit further forward. A bit more heat will cause this rock to visually come further forward than those rocks in the background. Hopefully it's making sense. It's kind of making sense for me, but if it's not, just bear with me. We've got a little ways to go before we close out this session. I got about another half hour in me. It's amazing how fast 3 hours of painting goes. I could do this all day. In fact, tomorrow I nearly will do it all day because I'm going to be going live for the Academy VIPs for about 5 hours straight. And at the end of that 5-hour session, I'm giving away this painting to one lucky viewer. Again, if you want to find out about that, click that link in the description down below. Right. I'm going to need to do stretches. Yes, I will, Rhiannon. Right. What do I think of the rock paintings of Julian Cooper? I'm not familiar with that name. Willis, I will look it up. Matthew Willis, sorry. Do I ever let rocks completely fill the canvas the way he does? No, generally rocks are part of my composition, not the whole thing. But I think it's a neat idea, so I'll check it out. Right. I think we could use a little sharpness in some of those edges, but for the block end, I think we're okay for those rocks. I think we're okay. I tell myself, it's going to be okay. Just a little variation there. One thing I do try to do with some of these shapes is have a bit of contrast. So light against dark, dark against light, and playing with those alternating shapes of light versus dark. Okay. I think what would help increase the energy here and the dynamic within this painting is having just a touch more of a splash. I love a good splash. That wave meets that rock. It's a classic irresistible force meets the immovable object, a timeless relationship of this turbulent relationship of wave and rock. I love it. I absolutely love it. So I'm going to obscure a little bit of this, just a touch. And later with the glaze, we can haze that out a little bit. Okay, and by the way, if it drops out randomly and I lose you before the end, I apologize. I am having some tech difficulties and some computer problems at my end. I did not delete enough files in time, it looks like, and it's saying I'm running out of disk space. But hopefully I was able to just delete enough stuff just now that it's gonna let me carry on. There's a spot of greenery at the top of that rock. That might be neat to get in there. To make that greenery, just a touch of that nickel yellow deep, touch of burnt umber. I'm mixing it straight into my wave color to make it a very muted green, and I'm just going to really dry brush it into the gap where that imprimatura was showing through, just for a spot of green on top of our rock. A bit of artistic license. I'm going to add another bit of green here, and I imagine there would be some growing up here. So we'll break that up a little bit further before it exits the canvas, of course. So one thing that could be emphasized is this feeling of light coming across. So I'm looking forward to getting into that in tomorrow's session, but I want to feel more of it right here with the wave, and particularly that curl of the wave. So let me grab a different brush here. This is one of my favorite brushes, and I'm gonna go for what I consider an extreme detail brush. Where are we? Where are you, little sucker? Somewhere here. Oh no, I washed it and I put it over here, didn't I? Okay. Huzzah. One of those, and one of those. There we go. Ah, here they are. These ones too. Good. Now these things here, these are ivory daggers. These are all 1/8 of an inch ivory dagger. Now the ivory, it's a synthetic brush made by Rosemary & Co. It's a slightly stiffer bristle, and it's nearly pretty close to natural hog hair bristle, but it holds its fibers in such a way that it maintains its shape beautifully over time. But I can use these to create some really nice detail and lines, and might be a little bit too soon for detail, but let's jump straight into it. Now I'm going to go for Cremnitz white and titanium white. Let's go ahead and get the palette shot in here. Speaking of tonal best, it's the end of this session, so I will make this a little tonally brighter than what we've been using previously, but it's still not the top of the tonal range. I could still go to pure titanium white. I want to keep that up my sleeve for the following session. So that's about as bright as I can go. I will go on this block-in session. And even though it looks like pure white, it's pretty far from it. It's like 2 or 3 steps down from that pure titanium white, even though the camera's not quite picking it up. So this is where paying close attention to my brushwork is going to be essential, and going back and continually reloading my brush. With this part, what I'm looking for is clean edges. And something here that's going to resemble that wave-like shape. So the direction of the stroke is also going to play a role here. I just love the way this white water breaks apart as it's curling up this wave. I got a really nice bit of reference here. You can see that on the left-hand side. That's the wave I'm referring to. And as that scoop of the wave comes up, it's reflecting a little more light, so I'm getting tonally a little bit brighter. But one of the reasons this needs to be slightly gray and not pure white is you can see it in that reference material. The only thing that's going to be pure white is the direct reflection of sunlight that's shining off the inside of the barrel of the wave. Now, if both of them were white, you wouldn't be able to register the brightness of the reflection of the wave. So it makes good sense then to knock back your tonal value. And even still, I probably went a little bit too bright, but we'll see how we go. All right. Are you going to upload this stream? Well, it's going to be on my channel for a while. What size are those ivory daggers? They're 1/8 of an inch, Laura S. All right. All right, just a second here, folks. I think I'm just going to need to there we go. Done. Okay, cool. How do you create movement in water? Well, hopefully this is doing it, Noah. So the movement is given by just paying really close attention to that reference material and what's actually happening in it. I know that sounds like a nothing answer, but the thing that will communicate the movement of this wave is paying very close attention to the shape that I'm seeing in that reference. And notice how this shape, it's going to give this wave a little bit of a feeling of that building and that forward motion. If I start to mimic this scoop that I'm seeing there, and again, I have to continually go and reload this brush. So I'm dipping away and I'm with my brush. So this is what you can't see because I don't have the palette shot up, but I'm continually reloading this brush to make sure that I'm creating clean lines. And by the way, in order to create these clean lines and working over the top of wet paint, you have to keep reloading, reload, reload, reload. So make a couple of strokes, readjust your edges. Now sometimes, Noah, a little bit of blending to soften and diffuse some forms could communicate a bit of a motion blur effect. And maybe this might be a really good opportunity to do some of that in this painting. I don't know about this sitting or session, but I have seen that done in certain paintings. Because, I mean, you think about it, still, paintings are a still static image. But to communicate that force and that movement, and that feeling of movement, that can be an interesting effect. It's just a little bit of blending to create a motion blur. So I might try and do a bit of that tomorrow. You've inspired me with your question, sir. Olivia Wells. Hi, Andrew. I'm an aspiring painter. Any advice for structuring your day around full-time work, balancing art with business? Much appreciated. So, Olivia, I just have a little bit of clarification there. Are you, do you mean working full-time, or do you mean having your art be full-time? So are you currently working full-time doing something else other than your art? Now, I'm really inspired by folks. You know, I'm going to shout him out here, but there's a chap on our academy. He might be watching right now. Shout out to my brother over there in Australia, Daniel Beresford. Now, Daniel works, and until very recently, was working full-time and was having to balance that full-time working whilst being an artist as well. And you do often hear from people that, oh, look, I'd love to do it, but I just don't have time. And I really have questioned that notion after watching somebody like Daniel, because he has just bloomin' made time. So he gets up super early in the morning and puts in whatever he can, and then he goes and works a full day. That might mean you're waking up at 5 a.m. And is it difficult to do? You betcha. Not that it's a race or a competition, but I get into the studio at 4 a.m. All right, so there you go, Daniel, I win. I'm kidding. But just to fit in enough of my creative production time, I have to have an early start on the day, because I too am balancing work and some of the business functions that we go through here and creative production time. And it's difficult to juggle sometimes. It is very difficult to juggle. Currently working, but would love to transition into full-time art. Okay, so again, whatever extra time that you have, I would be dedicating as much of it to your art as possible outside of your work. That might mean that there's certain things in your life that you might have to cut out or give up. Often people that are wanting to make that transition find that. So if you have idle or spare moments, you know, and this is the other thing as well, working full time, you're using a lot of your energy to do your work, right? And so I get it, like, you know, my sympathies, because it is difficult to do your creative best when you're just absolutely tired and worn out. However, I would really encourage you to try and do that, because what you're going to do is build that creative muscle and resilience, so that you'll have more in reserves to be able to do that. So the more you try it, the better you get at it. Now, hopefully that's starting to feel like a little bit of a curl there. And I've worked with a slightly duller gray towards the top of that wave. But Olivia, if you want any tips on the art business side of things, check out the Creator Activator course, which is on the Academy. I went, Permaculture Kiwi wins. You wake up at 3. Well done. You do win. All right. All right. Sun shining through the wave, maybe. At this angle, the sun is more shining on the wave, not through it. It's a slightly different angle. It's not an angle I usually paint with my waves, but there you go. And again, it's only the block end. So I normally will take about 3, 4, maybe even 5 sessions to finish off a painting this size. And again, it's about 20 centimeters by 45 centimeters. So there's a few hours to go in it yet. This was just the initial block end. This kind of gets me pretty close to seeing, is the composition going to work? Am I on the right track? If you're enjoying it, if you've enjoyed today's demonstration, do me a huge favor, hit that like button. If you haven't hit the like button yet, it makes a huge difference. Helps more people see this. I really appreciate it. Couldn't do it without you. So if you've gotten any value from this, this free lesson here today, then do me a solid and hit that button. So I've raised the tone ever so slightly, and I continually reload this little ivory dagger brush I've got a touch more nickel yellow in my mix, so it's going a bit warmer. And I'm just slowly and methodically, not really using too much paint at this stage, but just slowly and methodically working my way along, increasing the tone, reloading the brush, increasing the contrast. Increasing that warmth that's coming through. Noah says, I know you're nearing the end of the stream. Just wanted to say thanks for doing this today. I've learned a lot. You've inspired me to work harder on my... Fantastic, Noah. That's good. Thank you so much. And tomorrow, once a camera check, yep, still going. I might just go ahead and do another take, though. Oh, and I'm about to run out of battery. Thank you, Tamara. Yeah, I'll go ahead and change the battery out on that camera. Here we go. This allows me to get up out of my chair and check the painting's progress from a distance. Not bad for one sitting. You know, we could go a little bit further. Let's go a little further today and see what else we can do here. There are some things I'd like to do with the water texture in that foreground and a sense of this white water coming through, but good fun. I can say that compositionally, just personally, I like it. I'm digging it. And again, if you're digging the composition, hit the like button. Come on. Okay, I won't ask you again, promise. All right. Yeah, so it's not a backlit wave. The sun's coming in from here. By the way, on that, whenever you establish light coming through and shining on the scene, try not to have the light coming in the opposite way. The sunlight has got to be consistent. You know, not every wave can be a backlit wave. Sometimes there's a time and place for having a frontlit wave. It just depends on what you want to say with your painting. But for this painting, I just thought, yeah, I normally do the backlit wave. I normally do that, and I love it. It's a lot of fun. But this time, I want to do a frontlit wave and communicate something else about the wave and light. Now, another artist that really inspires me, who painted waves exceptionally well, is Frederick Judd Waugh. W-A-U-G-H. I know Jim Meeker knows who Frederick Judd Waugh is. And he painted waves going every which way, being lit from every which way. And I just really, really love his work. Super inspiring. Very simple compositions. All right. Thank you, Andrew. Always learn something new. Thank you, Mary. Appreciate you. Well, that's Brent. Thank you. Hopefully we can bring it. So I'm starting now to use just a little bit more white in my mixes, and you can see how it's bringing out a little more relief in some of these areas and splashes. And I'm continually going through and reloading that brush and just working across the front of some of these masses, building up the body of the paint, the texture, and hopefully increasing that tone. To show you that it's pretty far from titanium white, I'll add a little bit more in. And in an area like this, let's make that a little lighter tonally. And you can see that it does start to stand out as you add more and more white. I might have gone a little bit too far with my tone though, but let's get back into that wave. I want to work some more on that wave. And I love this white water as it's curling up into this wave and it's starting to break apart. But again, super dangerous because this is a place that I'd put in that artificial looking pattern. Too much of a net, too even on those little ovals, squares, and diamonds. So just break it apart in a natural way. So vary those shapes. Right. Check out Fritz Thallo. Oh, one of my favorites, Connie Rand. Norwegian impressionist who died in 1906. I think you'd enjoy seeing his painting. I've got a file on Fritz Thallo. Oh, Samuel Earp in the house. Hey, how you doing, Samuel Earp? I bet Samuel Earp's got a file on Fritz Thallo as well, eh? What time do I start on the Academy to watch? So I know it's going to be 10 a.m. here in New Zealand. It's posted on the homepage. If one of my Academy members could just let me know what time it is Eastern Daylight Time. I deal with New Zealand time, but I do know it's 10 a.m. here. It's just going to be 1 hour later than what we started today. Today I started at 9. So tomorrow I'm going from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. I'm going to finish off this painting, and I'm going to give the painting away to one of the viewers, one of my Academy members. So if you enjoyed this, you want to see some more, make sure you tuned in. I'm just going to continue to chip away, and we'll run down the clock while I put in some of these windows of that beautiful sea green. Again, cobalt teal, a little bit of phthalo green, a little bit of umber in there to desaturate. So now I'm working with my positive and my negative shapes. "5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time," says Irene Pellegrino. Thank you very much. It might be different for you, Jen, if you're in Texas. 4 p.m. Central Daylight Time. There you go. 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, USA, says Kevin. All right. 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. I'm very sorry if you're in the UK and watching tomorrow. Very sorry. Curious as to if you have an intended focal point, as I'm drawn and fixated on that curling into the... Yeah, cool. So are you drawing over here, Nikki? Hopefully as we develop this more, I'm really hoping that that's going to be the focal point, is this wave right here, as it's curling in. I'm hoping. Right, bit more cobalt blue, get a bit more cobalt teal, bit more connector magenta. Let's get into this white water, break it up a little bit more. Now the direction and the shape of the stroke will say so much about the orientation of this plane here. And obviously with some longer ellipses there, it'll give us the feeling that because of the point of difference between the length of that ellipse and the flatness of that shape, as it starts to open up, hopefully it starts to communicate that three-dimensionality. Does that make sense, or did I just say a bunch of just words? Cobalt teal, nickel yellow, deep, great color for this green of the New Zealand coast here. Really enjoy nickel yellow. Hey, Samuel Earp, have you discovered nickel yellow yet? It's very nice. I'd say it's semi-opaque. I've been playing with it, going, are you opaque or are you transparent? It's kind of right in the middle. All right, so thank you, Sherry. Appreciate that. My go-to for Seascapes years ago was E. John Robinson. Now I spend my time here. Well, thank you, Anthony. Appreciate you. Very good, Detective. Very, very good. About a year in now. Yes, I will, Olivia. I will be doing another plein air tour. We're about to announce our dates for 2026. So we will be doing more plein air down under. I'm first announcing that tour to my participants who joined us on the first tour. They'll get first dibs on this next trip. Then I'm going to be announcing it to my Academy members. Then I'm announcing it to my email list. Then maybe I'll announce it to YouTube. But to give you an idea, it never went on YouTube, and I never announced it or advertised or marketed it. I sent one email, and it was sold out in about 12 hours. So a lot of people have been waiting for that, but the first folks to find out about anything that I'm doing ever are those on the Academy. So again, check it out. There you go. So I'm going to break this up with a little bit of shadow here, cast by some of these rocks in the foreground, creating a little bit of relief here. A little bit of thickness to that white water. It's really interesting. As it gets really whipped up and frothy, the light seems to just glow through it. But in other areas where it's accumulated on the surface, it's like whipped cream. Very interesting. All right. Thank you, Sabine. Thank you, Sabine. Bless you. Thank you so much. Year 4, Detective. Good night. Wow. Way to go, man. Way to go. I know it's not for everybody, but it's worked for me. All right, so I'm going to mix up. Again, I know you can't see the palette right now, but I'm going to mix up a little bit of a gray color and go a little bit darker. And these are the windows in that white water that are just showing through a couple of spots to get some flatness down here across this section of the painting. So maybe, I don't know, but I think maybe there might be a little bit of a lift up right there of the white water. So just mixing in a bit of this green, some elongated strokes might just help communicate this plane, break it up a little bit more, that monotony of the white water all across here. I do love how these forms in the foreground get lapped with this white water, and then as it draws away, it just creates this energy. So I was asked earlier, I think it was Noah that was asking, but I was asked earlier about how to create that movement in the water. So I think just by having lots of different stuff going on like this, I want there, even though I've got two major focal points, the wave and hopefully that rock or this area of rock that's getting zonked with that light, I hope there's still some really nice little visual delights going on here and there that the viewer can discover, even if it's just the way water draws off a rock. So again, I'm using the same 1/8 of an inch ivory dagger brush. And just breaking up some of this white water here. I think that really helps. Now, because I've held back with my value, also the color, all I need is just a little bit of a point of difference between that underlying violet and then a slightly lighter violet, ultramarine blue, a touch of quinacridone magenta, but a little more titanium white. and I can come along, even though it's in the shadow, just lift the value slightly and create just a bit of a point of difference. And that will give a bit of volume and thickness to some of this white water here in the foreground. It's the little differences that I think make all the difference. But again, continually reloading your brush, that's the trick. Now, what I really love is anytime you get a broken edge like this. But let's say we had a little bit of this white water thrown up onto this rocky shore. Let's break up that edge a little more. Let me get my reference out of the way. There we go. And let's break this up just a bit more by putting in a couple little bits of white water. And also clean up that imprimatura. Now notice how the initial sketch color that we were using to draw in our composition with the brush, it's kind of gone away. It's blended in here and there. And so it didn't matter if I was painting the sky or painting the water, painting the waves. It blended in and coordinated beautifully. And that's because every area of this painting has got those colors in it. There's quinacridone, magenta, and burnt umber throughout. So even if I have it in a place like down here, it's not gonna bother me at all. It blends and goes away perfectly by just tapping that with the brush. There's a lot more work to do on this thing. But that's one sitting. That's one sitting. About 3 hours of work. Maybe 2.5 with all the talking. Okay. My goodness, that is going to do it just about for this live stream. Gosh, if you've been watching all the way up until now, can I just say a huge thank you. Before you go, please, please, check this out. Before you go, let me pull this one up and let's go over here and let me click on this and let me move me over here. There we go. So if you enjoyed this live stream every week, every single week for at a minimum of 3 hours, that's my shortest live stream now in the Academy. I'm not doing any 2-hour live streams now because you can't get enough painting and talking done. So they're 3 hours at least on the Academy, but tomorrow we're going to be going live for 5 hours straight. And I'm going to carry on with this painting that you've just seen, this painting right here. I'm going to carry on with this thing, and we're going to finish this off in tomorrow's live stream. And at the end of that live stream, I'm giving away the original painting. So check it out. Now, all you got to do is go to that address that you see at the bottom of the screen there. When you sign up, you get a 7-day free trial. So check it out. And there also, it comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. And that means, you know, if you're not totally thrilled with Tish Academy and you're not learning tons, then I'll give you your money back. No hard feelings, no questions asked. So what's on there? What do you get? Well, you get access to over 350 hours of content. That's right. The content library alone is so friggin' massive, it'll take you years to get through all of the content that we have for you. But there's full courses, full demonstrations designed specifically to help you master oil painting across a wide variety of subjects. Not just on seascapes and waves, we got portraits, we've got some animal subjects, we've got still lives, we've got landscapes, we got all kinds of stuff. So check it out, dive in, and you can also, if you join at the Academy VIP tier, you have access to those weekly live streams. So Academy goes for $25 per month, or the Studio Basic tier, if you don't want to tune into the live streams, is only $15 per month. But if you can't make the live stream, you can always watch those replays. The best part is we have simply the best community online, period. I'm sorry, we do. Maybe I'm biased, but we totally do. Shout out to all my OGs. Shout out to all my Tish Academy members. Hit me up in the live chat right now. Or if you're watching the replay, leave me a comment down below. Tell folks what you've thought of the Academy. Some folks here that are joining us now, like Jim, like Lori, and too many to name. Too many people here that I've recognized from our Academy, but they've been with us for years and years and years. And I think they're with us for a reason. So really appreciate you guys. Big love. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining me here in the studio. I really hope that you check it out. And look forward to seeing you over there. Looking forward to seeing you in tomorrow's live stream where we're going to continue with the painting that we've been working on today. But that's going to do it for now. Thanks so much. Again, if you enjoyed it, click the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and all that good stuff. I will see all of my Academy members, all my OGs in tomorrow's live stream. But that's going to do it for today. Thanks very much. All right. Go and pick up a paintbrush and go and paint something, will you? Hope this has inspired you. All right. Bye for now.